Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing, eager to witness the young man's death. The unpredictable space-time ninjutsu and the lightning-based jutsu that had wiped out so many of his clansmen had placed immense psychological pressure on him. However, no matter what Kyosuke had done in the past, nothing prepared Takeya for the scene that unfolded next. The human puppets that had surrounding Kyosuke raised their hands, green chakra glowing brightly in their palms. But in the next moment, as if losing their minds, they suddenly turned and followed their original trajectories, flying back the way they came. This meant that there was no longer any obstacle between the two from clashing. With no time to think further, Takeya, who was on the verge of life and death, gathered a basketball-sized chakra orb with all his might. "You bastard, I am Otsutsuki Takeya, the man who will one day rule the earth. I will never die here." Takeya's words seemed arrogant, but they couldn't hide the despair in his tone. Kyosuke didn't even bother responding. With the cursed seal spreading, he entered the second stage once again. Black lightning rapidly gathered around him. If the enemy wanted to clash, he was more than willing to oblige. "Go to hell with your foolishness." Wailing Chidori. The black lightning-covered hand chopped down, colliding squarely with the incoming orb of light. A terrifying energy storm erupted. While Kyosuke's chakra might not be as strong as his opponent's, the cursed seal allowed him to continuously absorb natural energy from the surrounding. As long as his body didn't collapse instantly, he wasn't afraid to clash with any enemy. On the other hand, Otsutsuki Takeya, who had initially been in a stalemate, quickly realized how powerless he was. He knew he was about to lose the battle, but there was no fear on his face. Only a sinister smile as if he had successfully tricked his opponent. "Idiot, you've fallen for it." Such an intense energy clash would undoubtedly cause a violent disruption to the chakra throughout the body, making it impossible to use any space-time ninjutsu. But it was different for him. Controlling the Hidden Moon Village puppets didn't require manual manipulation. It didn't matter if he couldn't win personally, the remaining dozens of puppets would take care of the enemy. "You're the one who should be going to hell, Kyosuke Uchiha." As soon as he finished speaking, the sky full of light bullets began to close in on the young man. Indeed, as Takeya had said, Kyosuke couldn't use the Flying Thunder God technique to escape at this moment. In the past, he might have used his cursed seal wings to withstand the attack, but he was now entirely different. "I've already tried the ability of my right eye. Now, it's time to try the dojutsu of my left eye." The irregular six-pointed star glowed faintly, then began to spin rapidly. And crimson blood flowed down his cheek, indicating that the burden of the ocular technique was even heavier than Kyosuke had anticipated. Fortunately, its effect was just as terrifying. The green chakra bullets, which would have hit their target in the next second, began to slow down uncontrollably. It wasn't time stopping, but rather a significant slowing of their speed. The closer the energy blasts got to Kyosuke, the more their speed slowed down, making it increasingly obvious. It was as if no matter how hard they tried, they would never be able to reach the young man's body. Boom! Takeya's chakra orb exploded, and the wailing Chidori shot straight ahead, easily tearing through the enemy's chest. As he was dying, Otsutsuki Takeya couldn't understand why he had lost. System notification: killed Otsutsuki Takeya, gained 7,400 points, an elite Jonin level opponent, a decent catch. Kyosuke hadn't wasted his time coming here to defeat him. Dispersing the Chidori, Kyosuke activated the Flying Thunder God to leave the spot, and only then did the chakra orbs return to their normal speed. Damn! Kyosuke clutched his blood-flowing left eye, briefly thinking he was going to lose his sight. Even Itachi Uchiha's Amaterasu wouldn't cause such terrible consumption in just a few seconds. Looks like I should avoid using my left eye ability too much. The ocular technique significantly slows down the flow of time around himself, with the effect being stronger the closer the enemy is. As long as his eye power was strong enough, no attack, even from 10,000 years ago, could reach him. This is the true, absolute defense. Before Kyosuke could even enjoy his brief moment of triumph, the blood dripping from his cheek seemed to remind him. The more powerful the dojutsu, the heavier the burden it places on the user. Slowing down a kunai is one thing, but slowing down a falling Tengai Shinsei meteor is an entirely different level of strain. Not wanting his eyes to go blind too quickly, he figured it was best to avoid attacks when he could. His right eye's dojutsu, called reversal. can reverse the time of non-living things within a specific area. For instance, when the enemy tried to use the Hidden Moon Village puppets to surround him, Kyosuke activated his right eyes technique, causing the puppets to lose control. Although reversal could not affect living things, it can change matter to influence the state of living beings, thus indirectly healing damage to living things. For instance, if someone were stabbed to death or roasted alive by fire, Kyosuke could reverse the time of the material to heal the damage done to them. It was said that the abilities awakened by the Mengekyo Sharingan reflected a user's inner obsession or desire. However, Kyosuke never expected his dual eye abilities would be related to time manipulation. Why? Kyosuke tried to analyze his inner feelings, but found no clear answers. Looks like it's time to call out my little buddy. Shaking his head with a smile, he opened the system panel and checked his current points. Points, 11,286, with the points back over 10,000, his financial troubles were temporarily eased. At crucial moments, this could be a lifesaver. After putting the Kusanagi sword back in its sheath, Kyosuke looked around, seeing the bodies of countless human puppets everywhere. Some had been destroyed by him, while many others were mere lifeless shells, having lost control. Killing them wouldn't yield any points, but Kyosuke still released a fire-style technique to burn all the puppets to ashes. With just my own strength, I can't possibly fight against the entire Otsutsuki Hidden Moon Village clan. I should return to the clan first. Just as Kyosuke was about to turn and leave, his expression suddenly changed. Boom! A massive rock, as large as a small mountain, fell from the sky, crushing the already damaged plaza beneath it. In the distance, Otsutsuki Sujito slowly descended from the air, his gaze filled with indescribable anger. Yes, he didn't particularly like Otsutsuki Takeya, but in order to unite the Hidden Moon Village of Clan, he needed his power. He never expected that this attack, which he hadn't paid much attention to, would end up with that man dying at the hands of this kid. It didn't matter if Takuya had died, but how was he supposed to lead the rebellious branch families now? It's all because of him. Everything is his fault. His eyes, glowing faintly, immediately locked onto Kyosuke, who was on the move. He raised one hand, and a terrifying pulling force immediately took control of Kyosuke's body. Damn it! Kyosuke thought, surprised, as he was sent flying. Isn't this Nagato's universal pull? Universal pull? This guy can use it too? Repulsion and attraction are the basic abilities of the Sage's eyes, involving both the Rinnegan and Tenseigan bloodlines. Previously, Otsutsuki Sujito hadn't been able to exert much power, and Kyosuke had thought something was wrong with his eyes. But now, after more than a year, he never expected Sujito had figured out how to use the universal pull technique. Looks like I'm not the only one making progress. Kyosuke activated his space-time ninjutsu and broke free from the universal pull. Feeling a little chakra left in his body, Kyosuke decided not to continue fighting. Using the kunai he had left as markers for Flying Thunder God, he quickly left the battlefield. As for the enemies closing in, he effortlessly dodged what seemed like unavoidable attacks with his second-stage Flying Thunder God technique. Next time I come back, I will erase the Hidden Moon Village clan from the face of the earth. Behind him, Otsutsuki Sujito was fuming with rage. Not this damned space-time ninjutsu again. One day, I'll rip your head off. Chapter 96, I'm back at night. Mito lay asleep in the carriage, snoring softly, while Kyosuke could not fall asleep no matter what. Bang! 2 shadow clones appeared, and he smiled as he handed over 2 flasks of wine. Come, drink with me. Clone number 2 took the flask and gulped down a large mouthful. Wiping the wine off his mouth, Clone 2 leisurely spoke. Now that you've awakened the Mengekyo Sharingan, you've truly entered the ranks of clan leader-level powerhouses. Get yourself familiar with both eye techniques and try to awaken the 3rd evolution. At that point, you'll be able to take another step forward. That's true. Clone 3 said with a silly smile, looking like an irrelevant listener. Even so, Kyosuke still felt a sense of comfort in his heart. Even if they were just fixed shadow clones, they made him feel like he wasn't alone. He had too many secrets that he couldn't share with anyone. The system, points, Black Zetsu, Otsutsuki, and even the fact that we live in a world built from a manga. He could never tell anyone these things. Too many unspeakable secrets filled him with a sense of loneliness he couldn't suppress. He even resisted others getting too close, fearing that he might accidentally expose the secrets in his heart. At that moment, he seemed to understand why he had awakened 2 time-related abilities, the end and reversal. Yes, it's time to begin the next phase of work. Kyosuke murmured. First, I need to find a way to solve the problem of eye power consumption. Of course. Clone number 2 picked up the conversation, saying indifferently. The seed has already been planted. When it blooms and bears fruit depends on your effort. By the way. The spectator clone number 3 weakly chimed in. When someone asks you why you awakened the Mengekyo Sharingan. Right, we should find a suitable reason. As they thought, the three of them looked toward Mido, who was still snoring in the carriage. Look, the reason is right in front of them, isn't it? That night, Kyosuke and the two clones talked a lot. From how to defeat the Senshu, to the power structure for establishing Hidden Leaf Village. Whether or not it was productive, but he hadn't felt this at ease in a long time. Before he knew it, the negative emotions from unlocking the Mengekyo slowly dissipated, not having a significant impact on Kyosuke's mental state. The next day, Mido was pleasantly surprised to find that the Kyosuke she was familiar with had returned. Hey, Kyosuke, how about we go to the land of hot water and soak in a hot spring? Princess, do you know how far the land of hot water is? What's there to worry about? With Flying Thunder God, it's only a 2-day journey. You make a really good point. Unable to resist the constant nagging from the bun-haired princess, Kyosuke reluctantly agreed. Using time-space coordinates he had set up many years ago, the two crossed most of the Land of Fire's territory in a single day, successfully reaching the hot springs before nightfall. You. How did you get in here too? Come on, this is a mixed-gender bath, you know. But I. Little Beansprout, without looking at your hair, I couldn't even tell if you were male or female. What are you worried about? Perverted, Kyosuke, I'm going to kill you. The pleasant time quickly ended, as something happened that forced Kyosuke to cut his vacation short. There were rumors that the ninja army of the Land of Rain had mobilized. In a single night, they forced the families of the Hatake and Inuzuka to flee. Additionally, the Fuma clan had allied with external forces and began a large-scale sweep of the family factions on the border of the Land of Fire. Wherever these two groups went, nothing was left alive. No ninja clans, not even ordinary towns, were spared from their ruthless attacks. This wasn't a war between ninjas, it was a large-scale massacre aimed at the entire Land of Fire. Northwest of the Land of Fire, at the frontline outpost of the Uchiha clan. Inside the tent, Tajima Uchiha sat firmly in a high position. On his left was the returned Madara Uchiha, and on his right was Kaijan Uchiha, whom he had been grooming. The other legion leaders were seated in order as they discussed how to deal with the Land of Rain. The Hatake and Inuzuka families had been defeated, and the Fuma clan had betrayed them. The next to be affected was inevitably the Uchiha clan. Moreover, they had heard that the enemy could use corpses to create lifelike puppets. This meant that if they couldn't wipe them out in one fell swoop, the enemy's power would only grow stronger. If the Land of Rain massacred the tens of thousands of people on the borders, things would become truly troublesome. Alright, let's hear your thoughts. Tajima Uchiha said, clearly displeased. He was so close to bringing Kyosuke's army under his command, but at a critical moment, news came that the main person was still alive. It was like finally getting into the friend's house for a drink, only for the wife to call and say she would be home in 10 minutes. One word, it completely killed the mood. The clan leader maintained a serious face, and no one dared to act recklessly. No one wants to become Tajima's victim. Reluctantly, Tajima turned his gaze to his son. Madara, what do you think? It's simple. Madara said, his silent eyes scanning the room, exuding an inexplicable pressure. We should make a preliminary contact with the enemy. At the very least, we need to figure out who they really are. What do you think, Kaijan? Tajima turned to the right, seemingly intent on grooming this person as a potential ally to his son. Unfortunately, Kaijan Uchiha had long seen through his intentions and understood the importance of biding his time. Seeing the clan leader ask, he gently bowed and smiled, saying, the suggestion from the young clan leader is excellent. I fully agree. Useless. Tajima cursed inwardly, suspecting that Kaijan was frightened by Kyosuke. He's not even back yet, and they're already like this. If he actually shows up, they'll probably be too scared to even breathe in his presence. After thinking for a while, Tajima looked toward the farthest seat in the tent, Uchiha. How about we leave the mission to gather intelligence on the enemy to you? No need for such trouble. A voice suddenly rang out from outside the tent. In an instant, everyone's expressions changed slightly. Some were excited, some resentful, while many had eyes filled with ambiguous emotions. My lord. Without caring about the clan leader's disgusted expression, Maya suddenly stood up and knelt toward the direction of the voice. Not just her, the entire camp started murmuring excitedly. Kyosuke-sama is back. Heaven bless the Uchiha clan, the Uchiha clan is saved, Lord Kyosuke is alive. Great. You're finally back. With Kyosuke-sama leadership, victory will certainly be ours. Kyosuke had driven off the 3 ninja art clans, forced the Uzumaki clan army to retreat, and killed Senju Nobunaga. His accomplishments were deeply remembered by most of the clan members. Amid the cheers that echoed through the lookout camp, Kyosuke lifted the curtain and smiled as he helped Ayako to her feet. You've worked hard this past year. My lord. Maya's eyes glistened with tears, her voice choking. Take a seat. We'll talk about everything later. After comforting his most loyal subordinate, Kyosuke ignored the other's eager greetings and walked steadily to the front. He fixed his gaze on Tajima, who was forcing a smile, and silently turned his attention to Keiichun Uchiha, who remained silent. Could you move a little? You're sitting in my spot. Chapter 97, Did you get lost after I told you to leave? As soon as the words were spoken, all the Uchiha in the room widened their eyes in disbelief. They had all heard, to some extent, about Keiichun Uchiha's challenge. Everyone also knew that when Kyosuke returned, he would definitely seek out an explanation from Keiichun Uchiha. The problem was, the clan leader was still present. To tell the deputy commander of his army to get lost in front of everyone, how could that not be problematic? Only Madara Uchiha at the back had a slight smile flash across his face. He hasn't changed at all. At the main seat, Tajima Uchiha's smile faded a little. Even when disciplining someone's dog, you must consider their owner, and Kyosuke's actions clearly showed that he did not take Tajima seriously. However, Tajima was not as angry as one might expect. In fact, there was a hint of secret pleasure in his heart. The more arrogant the young man acted, the more reasons he would have to target him later. Not to mention stopping them, this clan leader would rather have the younger generation fight each other to the death. Keiichun Uchiha was aware of the malice surrounding him, but he was in a difficult situation now. Resist? He knew he was still no match for Kyosuke, and there was no way they could fight to the death. No one would allow such a thing to happen. So, he had no choice but to obediently step aside. Sigh, Uchiha let out a light sigh in his heart, then raised his head and calmly shook it. Perhaps you could change seats. Huh? Kyosuke's expression remained unchanged, but he felt a slight sense of doubt. He felt that his cheap cousin seemed a little different. Had it been before, Keiichun Uchiha would have likely put on an attitude of don't underestimate the young, showing clear hatred from the bottom of his heart. But a year had passed, and the person who hated him the most seemed to have changed entirely. On the surface, he had become the symbol of arrogance and dominance, while Keiichun Uchiha now seemed to possess the patience of a more mature and powerful individual. Well, maybe that's exactly what's happening. A sarcastic smile curled at the corner of Kyosuke's lips. Keiichun Uchiha's patience was commendable, but Kyosuke was never one to follow the rules. Patience, huh? Don't underestimate the young, huh? Fine, let's see how long you can keep it up. ZZT. No one could have predicted it, but Kyosuke actually made a move in front of everyone. The violent Chidori flow overturned Tajima Uchiha's tent, and with his index and middle fingers pressed together, a dazzling Chidori sharp spear shot straight toward the enemy's chest. The killing intent was chilling. In that moment, Keiichun Uchiha finally realized that the gap in their strength was far greater than he had imagined. Even if he teamed up with Izumi Uchiha and Maya Uchiha, the three of them together might not be able to match this immense power. In just a year, how could he have become so terrifying? Blood sprayed from his shoulder as Keiichun Uchiha barely avoided being pierced through the chest by the lightning blade. He stumbled to the ground, quickly forming hand seals, and a piercing screech suddenly echoed through the camp. Kyosuke shook his head, openly displaying mockery on his face. With your level, you dare to use Chidori in front of me? The strike that injured Keiichun Uchiha was actually because he had activated the effect of his cursed seal. Without that, Keiichun Uchiha would have had enough strength to hold his ground. Originally, Kyosuke had planned to teach him a small lesson and leave it at that. But unexpectedly, this idiot actually tried to use a stolen jutsu in front of him. If he didn't give him a proper beating, people might start thinking Kyosuke was someone easy to push around. Of course, he had to come up with some excuse to make it look justified. Kai Uchiha, you stole my jutsu and even injured several of my subordinates. Today, I'll personally teach you a lesson. Kyosuke, maintaining the curse mark state, his face now marked with black symbols, gave off a dangerous and mysterious aura. Without needing hand seals, lightning crackled around his palm, far surpassing his opponent's power. Both pairs of three Tomoe Sharingan activated simultaneously, drawing gasps from the surrounding clansmen. They're both incredible. Indeed, but Kyosuke-sama is clearly superior. I agree. The title of one of the trio Uchiha isn't just for show. Honestly, I'm more curious about that black marking on his face. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the two Chidori techniques collided with a deafening crack. Kyosuke Uchiha. At this point, Keiichun Uchiha knew there was no point in hiding anymore. Even though the chances were slim, he still wanted to make one last attempt. However, after just 3 seconds of clashing, his disadvantage became glaringly obvious. What? What is that energy inside him? Through the Sharingan, he could clearly see an endless flow of energy surging into Kyosuke's body. This energy was being broken down and refined into a unique chakra under Kyosuke command. This was outright cheating. On the other side, clan leader Tajima also realized that something was wrong. No matter what, Kaijun Uchiha was still under his command. Allowing him to be defeated so publicly would damage his authority as clan head. Realizing this, Tajima's chakra exploded beneath his feet, and he quickly rushed to the front of the two men. "How dare you! Stop this immediately!" Though Tajima's words seemed aimed at stopping the fight, the force of his attack was clearly directed more at Kyosuke. If Kyosuke didn't withdraw, that punch alone could leave him bedridden for days. "Cunning old fox," Kyosuke muttered, his voice laced with disdain. At the critical moment, he slowly closed his eyes. An eerie scene unfolded, causing even Madara Uchiha, who had been watching with interest, to change his expression. "Father, stop." He wanted to speak out to stop it. However, before anyone could make sense of Kyosuke's behavior, they noticed something unusual about Tajima's attack. Something's not right. The onlookers quickly realized something was amiss. It wasn't just the speed of his punch that slowed down. At this moment, Tajima Uchiha seemed as if he had been struck by a weighted boulder jutsu, his entire body moving with an unusual sluggishness. Tajima's heart tightened abruptly, and he instinctively stepped out of the range of the unusual jutsu's influence. Strangely enough, the moment he took a step back, the oppressive weight on his body vanished without a trace. It was as if everything he just experienced had been an illusion. As he prepared to strike again, Tajima finally noticed something unusual. His eyes. A six-pointed star, irregular in shape pattern, was now clearly visible to everyone. The Mangekyo Sharingan. Realizing this, the entire scene fell into a deathly silence. Only the crackling sound of the Chidori clash continued to echo in the air. Boom. In the end, Kaijun Uchiha was defeated in the clash, but at this point, no one was paying attention to him anymore. The Mangekyo Sharingan. After the chaos of the family's internal conflict, no one had awakened such supreme ocular power for decades. No one expected Kyosuke, who had narrowly escaped death, to deliver such a shocking revelation. You. Tajima's face turned from pale to flushed and back again. Clearly, his mood was anything but pleasant. With the camp now destroyed, holding a meeting was out of the question. Unwilling to watch Kyosuke bask in triumph, Tajima stormed off in frustration. Chapter 98, Will You Marry Me? With the meddling clan leader gone, everyone finally felt a bit more at ease. The appearance of the Mangekyo Sharingan was too astonishing, and everyone was eager to understand its origin. Years ago, all information about it had been strictly sealed within the clan. Now, only rumors circulated, and their authenticity was impossible to verify. Some said that awakening the Mangekyo required talent. At the very least, one needed to awaken the three Tomoe Sharingan before the age of 20. Others claimed that the Mangekyo could only be obtained by consuming the blood of close relatives. The most absurd rumor suggested that only offspring born of close kin could possibly awaken this legendary Mangekyo Sharingan. Facing everyone's inquiries, Kyosuke found it difficult to give a straightforward answer. If he revealed the truth and people started killing their kin only to fail to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, he would become the clan's scapegoat. That was precisely why this information had been so meticulously suppressed in the past. Otherwise, everyone in pursuit of power might slaughter their loved ones until none remained, rendering the Uchiha clan extinct without any outside intervention. After a brief moment of thought, Kyosuke gave a tactful explanation. To awaken the Mangekyo, one must endure extreme emotional turmoil. A surge of overwhelming negative emotions triggers a peculiar energy in the brain, causing the three Tomoe Sharingan to evolve further. He avoided mentioning anything about killing loved ones and also left out the fact that one's ocular potential determined whether they could ascend to the Mangekyo level. As for the idea of triggering emotional distress, every Uchiha who had unlocked the Sharingan understood this. It was essentially stating the obvious. Without getting the answers they desired, the crowd was unwilling to let Kyosuke leave so easily. "Kyosuke, how did you awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan?" Someone finally asked the key question. The moment these words were spoken, the scene fell silent. From behind, Mido, who had been secretly eavesdropping, perked up her ears. Only now did she realize that Kyosuke had awakened an advanced version of the Sharingan. No wonder he dared to infiltrate the enemy camp alone. He had been testing his new abilities. She had to admit, she was growing increasingly impressed with Kyosuke. Even if she couldn't guess the full truth, she could deduce his motivations with surprising accuracy. However, she could never have expected that she herself would appear in the story he was about to tell. About a year ago, I was lured into a trap set by the enemy. Kyosuke began. Uzumaki Ashina, Uzumaki clan leader, joined forces with Senju Nobunaga to ambush me. I let my guard down and was attacked by a fake Mido. It was only after narrowly escaping that I realized I had awakened the Mangekyo. Kyosuke recounted the events briefly, but to those listening, every word carried a chilling weight. Uzumaki Ashina, one of the Land of Fire's top-tier powerhouses, known for his unparalleled expertise in sealing techniques. Senju Nobunaga, a familiar and despised adversary, an old schemer constantly devising ways to harm others. The combined strength of those two was truly terrifying. No one present here dared to claim they could escape alive. This kind of courage, to face death and emerge alive, is that the key to awakening the Mangekyo? Someone speculated, resolving to find an opportunity to test the theory. While the men admired Kyosuke's bravery, these words struck a completely different chord with Mito. No, that's not it. His awakening wasn't because of the trap. She thought. Countless Uchiha have faced life or death situations, yet none of them awakened the Mangekyo. Kyosuke mentioned an enemy capable of impersonating me, someone who carved seals that blocked the Flying Thunder God technique. So, the emotional trigger for his awakening. Was it because I attacked him? Plop. Tears streamed down Mito's face as she sank to the ground, her body trembling. Hugging her knees, she cried uncontrollably. She knew she shouldn't disgrace the Uzumaki clan by showing such weakness in the Uchiha camp. But no matter how hard she tried, the emotions surging within her were impossible to suppress. It's all my fault. It's because of me that he's been wandering alone for a year. To think, I mean that much to him. Ahem. Madara Uchiha cleared his throat, interrupting the crowd's questions. Kyosuke has just returned. Let him deal with his own affairs first. As he spoke, he gestured toward the distance and left with the other legion leaders. Puzzled, Kyosuke turned and soon noticed Mito sitting on the ground. Quickly, he approached her and draped his cloak over her shoulders. In a gentle voice, he asked, "What's wrong? Did someone say something hurtful to you?" He assumed someone harbored resentment toward the Uzumaki clan and had taken it out on Mito at the camp. Harboring hatred was one thing, but Mito was his person. Insulting her was an insult to him. Though Kyosuke hadn't caused enough trouble yet, this would have been the perfect excuse to act. But no matter how much he asked, Mito just shook her head, refusing to say a word. Kyosuke even began to wonder if Uzumaki Ashina, far away in the land of whirlpools, had passed away. If that really were the case, I suppose I'd feel a little comforted. With a helpless shake of his head and a faint smile, Kyosuke bent down and scooped up the young girl. Ignoring the curious and judgmental gazes of those around him, he carried her back to his own camp with an air of calm indifference. At the entrance, 105 ninjas stood in orderly formation. At the front were Izumi Uchiha and Ma Uchiha, the two commanders. When Kyosuke's figure appears, all 107 individuals drop to one knee in unison, their faces filled with excitement. Kyosuke had already heard about the situation from others. Even he hadn't expected this group to remain so loyal to him. As for those who had left, he didn't hold much of a grudge. Everyone has their own path, and besides, at the time, he had indeed been declared dead. Leaving wasn't an issue. At least those who departed could secure better futures for themselves. But the one truly deserving of resentment was clan leader Tajima. To force the legion into submission, he repeatedly sent Kyosuke's subordinates to the most dangerous missions. 30 lives. 30 loyal comrades. Had been lost in a year of grueling battle. Someday, Kyosuke would settle this debt with Tajima. A blood debt must be repaid in blood. Thank you all for your hard work over the past year. Kyosuke nodded to the crowd, his expression solemn as he made a vow. You have not failed me, and I, Kyosuke, will not fail you. He took out a set of meticulously compiled ninjutsu notes and the summoning contract scroll for Richi Cave, entrusting them both to Izumi Uchiha for safekeeping. From this day forward, every member of my division may study the ninjutsu recorded on these scrolls. As for the summoning contract, anyone who earns your approval may sign it freely. With the exception of the Flying Thunder God technique, nearly all of Kyosuke's techniques were documented in those scrolls. Even the Cursed Seal technique, though its high learning requirements meant it would take most people years to master. Thank you, Lord Kyosuke. The group shouted in unison, their faces glowing with renewed hope. The sight stirred profound emotion in all who witnessed it. Yet, among the many faces, one stood out with a hint of awkwardness. Mito, cradled in Kyosuke's arms. She didn't even need to look to know how many eyes were fixed on her at that moment. When they finally returned to the tent, she exhaled a long breath, her tense body gradually relaxing. Seeing this, Kyosuke smiled faintly and was about to leave when her soft voice stopped him. Kyosuke, will you marry me? Chapter 99, Izumi Uchiha's challenge. 3 days later, Uzumaki Mito was preparing to say her farewells and leave. The purpose of her runaway escapade was to confirm Kyosuke's safety. Logically, she should have already decided to return to the land of whirlpools, but for certain reasons, she had been reluctant to leave. Now that she had appeared openly at the Uchiha clan's outpost, it was only a matter of time before word spread. Not wanting to incite another war between the two clans, the only option left for Mito was to leave as quickly as possible. "I'm leaving now." Standing at the entrance of the camp, the young girl swayed her twin buns playfully, her large eyes fixed on the boy with a mischievous glint. "Take care on your way," Kyosuke responded, glancing toward Izumi Uchiha and the special escort squad he had specially assembled. Each member of the team was an elite, not only highly skilled but also proficient in the Chidori technique. Combined with his specially crafted alert talisman, they were more than capable of ensuring the little girl's safe return to the land of whirlpools. The alert talisman, resembling a small satchel, would send a signal to Kyosuke no matter the distance when crushed. Thanks to time-space coordinates scattered throughout the Land of Fire, he could swiftly reach any location, allowing him to pull off seemingly impossible rescue missions. "Rest assured, my lord, I will ensure Lady Mito's safety with my life," one of the team members declared. "Good." Kyosuke nodded, signaling with his eyes that they could depart. Everything that needed to be said had already been discussed over the past 3 days, there was no need for more parting words now. At least, that's what Kyosuke thought. Mito, however, had a different plan in mind. What could she do? With how popular Kyosuke was among the Uchiha, she couldn't bear the thought of something unexpected happening to him while she wasn't around. Outwardly, she nodded and turned as if preparing to leave, but her large eyes darted mischievously around, searching for someone. Before long, a sneaky figure appeared in the distance. It was Maya. She handed a large megaphone to the Uzumaki princess before retreating quietly back the way she came. Of course, she didn't go far. After all, she had been looking forward to what was about to happen for days. Ahem. Mito raised the megaphone Maya had prepared, took a deep breath, and shouted. "Kyosuke, you must hurry up and marry me." Her voice, amplified by the device, echoed across the entire camp. "You must come and marry me. Come and marry me. Marry me." For a moment, the entire camp fell into an eerie silence. Tajima Uchiha, who had been eating, froze. Madara, instructing his subordinates in training, froze. Izuna Uchiha, rushing back to camp, froze. Even Kai-jun, who had remained behind closed doors for the past 3 days, froze. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button on the entire Uchiha clan. Everyone collectively wondered who was brave enough to say something like that. Now no one will dare make a move on him. The twin bun princes smirked with satisfaction before tossing aside the megaphone and bolting into the distance. Back in the camp, Kyosuke covered his face with his hand, thinking it might be best to avoid showing up for a while. Those legion commanders had notoriously sharp tongues. While he prided himself on his wit, he wasn't confident enough to fend off all their banter. If it were about debating with a bunch of busty women, I might stand a better chance. Unfortunately, the calm was short-lived. Before Kyosuke could recover from the embarrassment of the public proposal, someone barged into his tent with great fervor. "Haha, so you're really not dead after all." The visitor was none other than Izuna Uchiha, returning from his training journey. At the Uchiha camp's rear mountains, in the training grounds, sigh. Feeling the unusual stares from those around him, Kyosuke let out a deep sigh, lamenting his misfortune. He was genuinely glad about Izuna's return. Along with Madara Uchiha, the 3 brothers reunited, enjoying a long overdue moment of camaraderie with hot pot and songs. It was as relaxing as could be. But of course, Kyosuke had to ruin it by casually asking Izuna about his training progress, leading to the current situation. Humphrey. Perhaps sensing Kyosuke's casual attitude, Izuna crossed his arms in imitation of his elder brother, and spoke with smug confidence. "You better watch out. If you lose to me, it'll be a disgrace." "Don't worry, that won't happen. TCH, if you've got the guts, don't use your Mangekyo." "Fine, no Mangekyo." The kid had grown up. He even knew how to use reverse psychology now. Kyosuke wasn't planning to use the Mangekyo anyway. The power of those eyes was far too valuable to squander needlessly. While Mangekyo's ocular power could gradually recover over time, each use without proper replenishment would decrease the upper limit of his total visual capacity. When that limit was reached, symptoms like blurred vision would start to appear. For a friendly spar, there was no need to go all out. Especially since Izuna might not even be strong enough to warrant such measures. "Don't underestimate him, Kyosuke," Madara suddenly said with a chuckle. As soon as the words left Madara's mouth, Izuna appeared right in front of Kyosuke, raising his blade and delivering a terrifying slash. Uchiha style, flaming sword slash. So fast. Kyosuke instinctively activated his Sharingan. Unleashing his Chidori blade, he managed to block the sudden attack, albeit barely. It was at that moment Kyosuke realized Izuna was no longer the little kid he could easily brush off. In the original storyline, Izuna was hailed as an enemy who barely showed any weaknesses. Even Tobirama Senshu, who mastered techniques like Flying Thunder God, Shadow Clones, and Summoning, Impure World Reincarnation, couldn't gain the upper hand against Izuna until he reached his second stage of mastery. This alone spoke volumes about Izuna's extraordinary prowess. Interesting. Kyosuke murmured, releasing a burst of chakra to force Izuna back. He then unleashed Chidori Sharp Spear, a 5-meter-long lightning blade that shot toward Izuna in an instant. However, with a nimble roll, Izuna easily dodged the attack. This guy is incredibly agile. Kyosuke frowned, his amazement growing. Izuna's flexibility and agility were remarkable. Combined with his refined swordsmanship, he could counter almost any attack. Most importantly, Izuna's proficiency in fire style was even greater than Madara's. As Kyosuke used the teleportation jutsu to dodge attacks, he couldn't help but ponder a question: what exactly was Izuna's Mangekyo Sharingan ability? During the Fourth Great Ninja War, Senju Tobirama once praised Sasuke, saying he had never seen such a powerful Kagetsuchi. This implied Tobirama had encountered the technique before. Given Tobirama's mastery of water style, Izuna must have possessed Kagetsuchi to be able to fight him to a stalemate. This particular ocular technique allowed the user to manipulate all flames, including Amaterasu, and extinguish them while simultaneously enhancing their power. A remarkable ability. Kyosuke thought with a smile. Its boost to foundational strength is significant. As he mused, Kyosuke casually tossed a specially designed kunai. Flying Thunder God? Izuna tilted his head in confusion, wondering if Kyosuke had lost his mind. Given his understanding of the technique, such an attack seemed childishly simple. Swish. Kyosuke's figure vanished along with the kunai. By the time Izuna realized what had happened, a slash had already appeared across the front of his clothing. The match was decided. Kyosuke had won. Chapter 100, Madara, help me pass a message to Hashirama, hooray! 100 chapters completed. Next milestone 200 chapters, confidently stepping forward to issue a challenge, only to be effortlessly taught a lesson. Unable to find a way to counter the Flying Thunder God technique, Izuna likely wouldn't have the courage to challenge Kyosuke again anytime soon. This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Izuna muttered in frustration afterward. You can move with the kunai. Doesn't that make you practically invincible? To this, Kyosuke simply smiled and shook his head, choosing not to explain further. Izuna's perspective was still too limited. While Flying Thunder God was a remarkable jutsu, it was far from invincible. Space-time ninjutsu was a standard tool for the true Otsutsuki lineage. Figures like Kaguya, Ishiki, and Momoshiki all possessed incredibly potent spatial abilities. Unlike the Flying Thunder God, they didn't need pre-marked coordinates. They could teleport with just a thought and even create their own dimensions. The Otsutsuki clan, who traveled across the universe and leaped between star systems, relied on this innate ability. In terms of convenience and battlefield utility, the ability known as Yamatsu Hirasaka far surpassed the Flying Thunder God. Even so, it was still difficult for such abilities to have a decisive impact at the highest levels of combat. The stronger a ninja's abilities, the more terrifying their reflexes and evasion skills. Take Might Guy's Seventh Gate, for example. It couldn't even touch Madara Uchiha's cloak. Teleportation might be instantaneous, but the process of appearing, targeting, attacking, and landing the hit took time. For anyone below the Super Kage level, these steps would happen in the blink of an eye, making it nearly impossible to counter effectively. However, at the Super Kage or even Six Paths level, the gap between those steps would give opponents enough time to counterattack. Izuna's concept of invincibility was limited to his current understanding. Essentially within the scope of clan leader level combat. At higher levels of combat, he lacked the knowledge and experience to grasp what it entailed. For example, Madara, observing from the side, shared Izuna's admiration for Kyosuke's progress but didn't entertain any thoughts of Flying Thunder God being invincible. While powerful techniques are essential, they only provide a strong foundation for a ninja, not a guaranteed path to ultimate success. In a word, power ultimately came down to the individual rather than their jutsu. Many Uchiha possessed Sharingan, but how many reached the legendary heights of the clan's elites? Many people could use water-style techniques, but no one wielded it as sharply as Tobirama. In the new era of Hidden Leaf Village, countless trained in the 8 gates, but none could replicate Might Guy's devastating technique. Kyosuke had defeated Izuna with the Flying Thunder God as a lesson to prepare him for future encounters with Tobirama. Even if Kyosuke discarded his Mangekyo Sharingan and didn't use Flying Thunder God, he would still have defeated Izuna. Why? Because he was Kyosuke Uchiha. Simple as that. After discussing the recent match, Kyosuke turned to Madara and asked, "What's your next move?" "What else?" Madara sneered, clenching his fists. If the enemy comes, we defend. If they want to die, we'll grant their wish. From his tone, it was clear he didn't take the Hidden Moon Village clan seriously. That won't do. Kyosuke sighed and began sharing the intelligence he had gathered. The strength of the Hidden Moon Village clan. Were they powerful? Undoubtedly. No single clan could face them alone. Not to mention, there was the involvement of the treacherous Fuma clan. With their mastery of creating human puppets, the enemy had no fear of prolonged warfare. Even if the Uchiha could hold their ground against the Hidden Moon Village clan, prolonged battles would only strengthen the enemy's forces over time. This didn't even take into account Kyosuke's suspicion that Otsutsuki Sujito had already mastered attractive and repulsion forces. In other words, he was essentially a stronger version of the Deva Path Pain. This granted him pseudo-super Kage level strength. On the battlefield, such a figure would be a terrifying weapon of mass destruction. Kyosuke would never allow the Uchiha to face such an enemy alone. As Kyosuke finished explaining, the room's atmosphere grew heavy. Izuna's mouth hung open, and he looked at him in disbelief, asking, "You're not just trying to scare me, are you?" "He's not," Madara said, frowning deeply, clearly troubled by the enemy's strength. "I didn't expect the enemy's strength to be this formidable." But then, noticing Kyosuke's calm demeanor, Madara suddenly smiled. "So, what's your plan?" "Hey, it's simple," Kyosuke replied with a sly grin. "We need to find someone willing to. Oh no, I mean, someone heroic enough to defend the Land of Fire." Though Kyosuke didn't spell it out, both brothers instantly understood who he meant. The Hyuga clan, located on the other side of the Land of Fire. What kind of secret dealings did Kyosuke have with the Hyuga? For some reason, Hyuga Tenjin, the cunning leader of the Hyuga clan, had previously gone to great lengths to support the Uchiha. Now, when Kyosuke mentioned needing allies, Madara and Izuna's first thought was the Hyuga. But things are different now. There's intelligence suggesting that the Senju have been in frequent contact with the Hyuga recently. Hearing this, Izuna glanced at Madara with a helpless expression. Sure enough, the next words confirmed his suspicions. Just a few days ago, Hashirama visited the Hyuga as a clan heir. There's a high likelihood they'll form an alliance. If Hashirama was personally involved, the odds were high that the alliance would succeed. At that point, their former allies might turn into enemies. Noticing the gleam in Madara's eyes, Kyosuke guessed that, if not for the urgent war preparations, Madara might have personally gone to the Hyuga himself. What his intentions would have been. Whether to disrupt the Senju's plans or for some other reason. Only Madara knew. After a brief silence, Kyosuke suddenly spoke with certainty. "It's fine, the Hyuga will definitely be involved in the upcoming defense." "Are you that confident?" "Of course, but I'll need to visit them personally." Hyuga Tenjin wouldn't refuse. After all, he coveted the Tenseigan more than anything else. On the moon, where the enemy held the advantage, Tenjin couldn't do much. But now that the enemy was in the ninja world, there was no way someone like Tenjin would remain idle. By visiting the Hyuga, Kyosuke could not only secure their support but also disrupt any alliance between the Hyuga and the Senju. No matter what promises Hashirama made, nothing would be more tempting to Tenjin than the Tenseigan. Given the circumstances, the Hyuga's refusal to ally with the Senju was almost guaranteed. "A perfect plan," Kyosuke said with a grin. "And it'll give me a chance to check in on an old friend." Beside him, Madara seemed lost in thought, his expression unreadable. If he could, he probably would want to switch places with Kyosuke. But unfortunately, Tajima would never allow his son to take such a risk. A fact Madara knew all too well. With a sly smile, Kyosuke leaned closer and teased. "Got any messages you'd like me to pass on to Hashirama?" Madara shot him a sideways glance before smirking. "As a matter of fact, I do." Chapter 101, The Cunning Hyuga Tenjin. In the southeastern region of the Land of Fire, the Hyuga clan reigned supreme, akin to emperors. The fires of war between the Senju and Uchiha clans never reached here, and no other family dared not to stir up trouble. Even the Uzumaki clan, who harbored deep resentment toward the Hyuga, would not cross half the Land of Fire to start a war. To put it plainly, the Hyuga clan had not yet shown their full strength. If they truly decided to mobilize their entire clan, it would surely spell trouble for both the Senju and Uzumaki clans. Just a few days ago, the young clan leader of the Senju personally visited the Hyuga in hopes of mending the historically friendly ties between the two clans. The cunning Hyuga Tenjin received him with the highest standards of etiquette. The only reason he helped the Uchiha before was out of respect for Kyosuke and the immense value of the Tenseigan, which warranted his intervention. Now that he had lent his aid, and repaid the favor in full, he had no intention of getting involved in the dispute between the two major clans. When the young leader of the Senju clan arrived, Hyuga Tenjin made sure to host him with the utmost propriety, just as he would if Madara Uchiha himself came to call. This was the wisdom of Hyuga Tenjin diplomacy, maintaining a low profile and biding his time until he attained decisive power. A survival strategy for times of chaos. Tennin's skill at dodging responsibility and deflecting issues had reached perfection, leaving the two young Senju brothers utterly vexed during their visit. The two brothers had always worked seamlessly as a team. The elder brother, Hashirama, played the fool, bluntly addressing the root of the problem in a straightforward manner. Meanwhile, the younger brother, Tobirama, pretended to scold him while subtly affirming his brother's point and blocking any chance for the opponent to refute. While this strategy wasn't foolproof, but it was incredibly effective against most adversaries. However, Hyuga Tenjin gave the fledgling Senju brothers a harsh lesson in diplomacy. After 3 days of talks, Tobirama was hoarse from speaking, yet he failed to gain any ground. Forget about threats or temptation. Tobirama almost found himself persuaded to leave empty-handed. Unwilling to give up, Tobirama dragged his elder brother for a 4th visit. Tenjin-sama. Tobirama began, only for the clan leader to immediately cut him off. Speaking of which, congratulations are in order for Hashirama Dano. Hyuga Tennin remarked with a soft smile, holding a book as he glanced at the two brothers. The Uzumaki clan is formidable, with an excellent geographical position. They're the perfect match for the Senju in an alliance by marriage. At these words, the brothers' faces changed dramatically. The marriage alliance was still under discussion and known only to the high-ranking members of the two clans. How had this old fox obtained such sensitive information? This statement could only mean one thing: Hyuga Tenjin had spies among their leadership. With a single sentence, Hyuga clan leader effortlessly intimidated the brothers. His implication was clear: if the Senju and Uzumaki unite through marriage, the Hyuga will inevitably be sidelined, perhaps even suppressed by your alliance. The two brothers weren't fools. They understood the rejection hidden within Tenjin's words. Clap, clap, clap. As the brothers stood stunned, Hyuga Tenjin clapped his hands. From behind a screen, a figure slowly stepped into the hall. It was none other than Hyuga Tenjin's disciple, Hyuga Yaoi. Hashirama Dano. Tenjin said, pointing to his apprentice. Yaoi is around your age, with a gentle and serene disposition. Don't you think she's a better match than that princess from the Uzumaki clan whom you've never met? The message was clear: marry my disciple and sever ties with the Uzumaki, or there's no point in continuing this discussion. Before the brothers could recover from this blow, Hyuga Tenjin delivered the finishing stroke. Switching the marriage alliance to the Hyuga? Absolutely not. The Uzumaki clan was the best choice in terms of mutual trust, family honor, and strategic location. An alliance with the Uzumaki would position the Senju to defend against external threats, while a union with the Hyuga would lack such advantages. Miss Yaoi is indeed beautiful, unmatched by most women in the world. Hashirama replied with a forced smile. Tennin-sama, we won't trouble you further for now. He added, dragging his reluctant brother out of the room. Father, your sons are at their limit. Hashirama cried inwardly, wondering why he had to endure this torment. As for Tobirama, he desperately wanted to storm back in and test his latest ninjutsu on that crafty old fox. Big brother, what do we do now? He asked. Taking a deep breath, Hashirama's gaze grew resolute. This is a necessary step toward peace. If we can't overcome even this hurdle, how can we hope to bring change to the land of fire? With these words, the brothers resolved to return the next day. Meanwhile, in the meeting hall, Hyuga Yaoi stood expressionless like a lifeless doll. Seeing this, the previously mild-mannered Tenjin suddenly erupted in fury, striking his disciple so hard that she was sent flying. Useless fool. His mood seemed especially sour. Despite all this time, there was no sign of movement from the Otsutsuki chakra. Forget about awakening the Tensei again. Now even Yaoi, the supposed vessel, had stopped showing any progress. Yaoi had once explained that the foreign chakra was indeed merging with her, but the process was excruciatingly slow. To yield any results, it would require decades of accumulation. By then, not only would he be gone, but even his son would likely have passed away. Hyuga Tenjin simply could not afford to wait that long. Now, only two paths remained open to him. The first option was to take the risk of transplanting the chakra into his son. Perhaps the pure Hyuga bloodline was the true key to unlocking the Tenseigan. The second was to return to the moon and seize the Tenseigan from his enemies by force. Both choices had their drawbacks, leaving him to decide which path to take. By the scattered chairs, Hyuga Yaoi slowly got up from the ground, still as respectful and cautious as ever, even though the blood on the corner of her lips had yet to dry. It was precisely this obedient demeanor that allowed her to conceal the fact that her caged bird seal had already been removed. Otherwise, even with Kyosuke's cover, the truth would have been exposed the moment Hyuga Tenjin conducted a simple test. After venting his anger, Hyuga Tenjin quickly shifted back into his usual gentle demeanor. He spoke softly, almost kindly. If I recall correctly, you mentioned before that Kyosuke Uchiha is still alive, didn't you? Yes. Yaoi nodded and added a surprising piece of news. According to reports from our spies, Kyosuke Uchiha is currently heading toward our clan. Haha, is he worried that I'll side with the Senju? Hyuga Tenjin chuckled sinisterly, his mind immediately racing with possibilities. If he wanted to return to the moon, he would need Kyosuke's help. And if he had to ask for assistance, he would naturally need to show his sincerity. So then, how much value would rejecting the Senju's alliance hold in Kyosuke's eyes? As for the situation in the Land of Rain, the Hyuga clan paid it no mind. With the Uchiha standing as the first line of defense, what was there to fear? What Hyuga Tenjin didn't know, however, was that the enemy he was so concerned about had already descended from the moon, gathering a force capable of utterly destroying his clan. Once the Uchiha could no longer hold the line, the next to face annihilation would undoubtedly be the Hyuga clan. Prepare yourselves. Let us welcome a long-absent guest. Hyuga Tenjin said as he prepared to leave. Suddenly, his expression shifted dramatically. He turned his gaze sharply to the direction of 11 o'clock. There's no need to trouble yourself, Hyuga clan leader. I'm already here. Before his voice had even fully landed, Kyosuke's figure had already appeared in the courtyard. Chapter 102, Talented individuals arise in each generation of the ninja world, each leading the way for decades. Staring at the young man in the courtyard, Hyuga Tenjin's eyelid twitched as he thought to himself, he really came quickly. Hyuga Yaoi was also a bit surprised, though her expression carried more joy than shock. Thank goodness, he's really not dead. Her fleeting reaction vanished in an instant. By the time the clan leader's gaze swept over her, her expression had already returned to calm and unshaken composure. Yaoi, why aren't you inviting Kyosuke in? There's no need. Ignoring Yaoi's invitation, Kyosuke strode boldly into the room and plopped down unceremoniously across from the Hyuga clan leader. I heard you ran into some trouble earlier, and Hyuga Tenjin began, slipping into his usual diplomatic tone. Unbeknownst to him, the person sitting before him was far from an ordinary youth. Trying to play politics with me? Kyosuke had no intention of going along with his script. I heard the Senju brothers are currently guests of the Hyuga clan? Kyosuke cut straight to the chase. Tenjin, taken aback by his directness, paused for a moment before nodding. Yes, the Senju and our clan are. Before he could finish, Kyosuke interrupted again, his tone sharp. So, has the Hyuga clan agreed to the Senju's alliance proposal? He deliberately stressed the word proposal, making his disdain for the Hyuga clan's hesitance evident. As the host, Kyosuke's bluntness was undoubtedly disrespectful. However, Hyuga Tenjin suppressed his anger with considerable restraint. What could he do? Argue with Kyosuke and risk breaking ties then and there? That would be akin to openly siding with the Senju clan. Serving under them was something Hyuga Tenjin would never agree to. Not in this lifetime. If he didn't have ambitions to rule, why would he go to such lengths to research the Tenseigan? From the start, an alliance between the Senju and Hyuga clans was never on the table. Kyosuke had a fair idea of the situation. Of course, his confidence came not just from understanding Tenjin's thoughts but from the broader circumstances. Both the Uchiha and Hyuga clans were facing threats from the Land of Rain. A second alliance was inevitable, otherwise, let him ask Senju Batsume if he was willing to step up and help the Hyuga deal with their troubles. Suppressing the rising anger in his heart, Hyuga Tenjin shook his head and said in a deep voice. My clan has no intention of forming an alliance with the Senju. Kyosuke, you can rest assured. That's for the best. Casting a glance at Hyuga Yaoi nearby, Kyosuke gave her a questioning look. Seeing this, Hyuga Tenjin immediately understood his meaning. No need to worry. Yaoi is already aware of everything she needs to know. So, her level of trust hasn't diminished. Kyosuke smiled inwardly, satisfied. He then began explaining in detail the situation concerning the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. They've descended? Hyuga Tenjin was momentarily dumbfounded. Weren't they supposed to be holding the fort on the moon? Now, instead of him going up to them, the enemy had come down on their own. The benefit of this is that he no longer had to ask Kyosuke for help to go to the moon, but the downside was that the situation was getting out of his control. Taking the documents Kyosuke had brought, Hyuga Tenjin meticulously reviewed each piece of data. Capable of converting enemy corpses into puppets. Combat power exceeding that of clan leaders. The most crucial part was that the enemy had repeatedly declared their intention to wipe out the Hyuga clan and had even vowed to skin and torture Hyuga Tenjin alive. Absurd. With a slight surge of chakra, the documents in his hands instantly turned to dust and scattered in the air. Kyosuke's eyelids twitched slightly. He thought to himself that this old man's strength was becoming more and more formidable. From Kyosuke's first impression, Hyuga Tenjin, usually so reserved and unassuming, likely possessed strength surpassing most clan leaders. The time is not yet ripe. Hyuga Yaoi must continue to endure for a few more years. Kyosuke refrained from intervening further. Tenjin was a shrewd man, he knew exactly what needed to be done. Given the Otsutsuki Hidden Moon Village clan's overwhelming strength, the Senju would undoubtedly remain on the sidelines. Batsuma would gladly see both the Uchiha and Hyuga clans destroyed. At that point, the Senju would make their powerful entrance, defeat the already exhausted enemy to dominate the Land of Fire. Not only that, but they'd also gain a reputation for fostering peace and unity. Why wouldn't they? If it were anyone else, even knowing the chances were slim, they would likely try to test the waters and see if they could extract something from the Uchiha. For example, if I don't act, you're doomed. Or I'll side with the Senju. And other such threats. But Hyuga Tenjin was a different breed of leader. A schemer and opportunist. While he lacked moral virtue, he knew how to secure the things that truly benefited him. Without any preamble or excuses, he directly stated the core issue: after we win, the Tenseigan is mine. No problem. Kyosuke nodded with a smile. This was the bargaining chip intended to lure the Hyuga clan into action. As for whether clan leader Tajima Uchiha would agree, that man was narrow-minded and had an I betray the world, but the world cannot betray me mentality. But he wasn't a fool. Tajima knew exactly how important the Hyuga clan was. The Tenseigan, while valuable, was ultimately unsuitable for the Uchiha to wield. Rather than waste time exploring it, it was better to focus on how to unlock the Mengekyo Sharingan. Hyuga Tenjin understood this as well, which was why he didn't doubt Kyosuke's promise. Glancing at the beautiful disciple beside him, a sudden thought emerged in Hyuga Tenjin's mind. Just like Senju Batsuma, if the Hyuga clan had decided to align with the Uchiha, it was only logical to solidify their alliance. Kyosuke, with his high status and extraordinary strength, would be the perfect match for Yaoi. However, before he could speak, hurried footsteps echoed from outside. Looking up, Tenjin saw none other than the Senju brothers. Kyosuke. Kyosuke Uchiha. Two shouts echoed, but the emotions behind the words were completely different. Seeing his old friend, Hashirama was very excited. If it weren't for the inopportune timing, he would have rushed forward to hug his old buddy. Meanwhile, Tobirama made no attempt to hide the killing intent in his voice. How dare you show your face in front of me? Give me back my uncle's life. With that, he drew the blade at his waist and charged into the hall. Impudent. Hyuga Tenjin roared in fury. Though much of it was for show. No matter what, Kyosuke was currently in his territory. As host, Tenjin couldn't sit idly by while his guest was attacked. Dashing in front of Tobirama, Tenjin struck out with a palm, intending to teach the unruly youth a lesson. At that moment, however, Hashirama suddenly appeared between them, crossing his arms to block the attack. Ha ha ha, clan leader Tenjin, please calm down. Hashirama said with a sheepish laugh, struggling to find a way to defend his brother's actions. Finally, he mumbled awkwardly. They haven't seen each other in a long time. Maybe they just want to spar and bond a little. Tenjin, of course, didn't believe this nonsense. What truly made him stop wasn't the excuse but the fact that Hashirama had blocked his strike. Even though Hashirama crossed his arms and seemed to be using all his strength, Tenjin knew it wasn't the case. The reason was simple: under the appearance of Hashirama exerting his full strength, his legs remained firmly planted, unmoving like the roots of an old tree. Taking a direct hit from him and remaining rooted in place. Such a feat could only be accomplished by a fellow clan leader-level powerhouse. Senju Hashirama. This young man is too terrifying. Chapter 103, Is What You See the Truth? Though consumed by rage, Tobirama Senju managed to retain his rationality. He understood that he couldn't unleash a powerful jutsu, doing so would only give the Hyuga clan an excuse to intervene. Close combat is the only way to quickly eliminate him. The kunai he thrust forward was blocked by Kyosuke. Seeing this, Tobirama puckered his lips as if he were about to kiss his opponent. Water-style, heavenly weeping. However, what emerged from his mouth wasn't a tongue but a swarm of countless tiny water needles. This jutsu required no hand signs and could be released at any moment, especially during a close struggle, catching opponents off guard. Unfortunately for him, he was facing Uchiha, and not just any Uchiha. Kyosuke possessed extraordinary ocular powers. As soon as the chakra began to gather, Tobirama's intentions were exposed completely. Kyosuke tilted his head to avoid the incoming water needles and raised his right leg, delivering a powerful upward kick that sent his opponent flying onto the rafters. Bang! The sudden burst of white smoke made Kyosuke's gaze to narrow slightly. A shadow clone. Tobirama Senju had, after all, invented the shadow clone technique. No. More accurately, he had plagiarized the jutsu he himself created. So, stealing my jutsu is what symbolizes the love and peace of the Senju, huh? Learned something new. Kyosuke's words dripped with sarcasm. It was logical and, at the same time, utterly shameless. Compared to Madara Uchiha, Tobirama resembled the descendant of Tajima Uchiha more. Of course, Kyosuke himself would never admit this. No sooner had Kyosuke finished speaking than Tobirama appeared behind him, his katana slicing horizontally, aiming to sever Kyosuke at the waist. When it comes to stealing jutsu, even all the 5 great nations combined can't beat the Uchiha. I'm merely following your example. Tobirama's sharp wit enabled him to throw some biting remarks in return. Oh? So the kid's growing some guts. Dazzling lightning surged from Kyosuke's body, and the Chidori current formed a blade of lightning that struck Tobirama, who had attempted to ambush him, flying. Always resorting to sneak attacks. You're just like a dog that can't stop eating its own filth. Bang. In Kyosuke's disdainful gaze, Tobirama's second shadow clone shattered. I wonder how many more you can make. Kyosuke said as he pulled the Kusanagi sword from his waist, the electric currents surging along its blade made even the chairs in the room tremble slightly. Activating his Sharingan, Kyosuke scanned his surroundings before vanishing in a flash, appearing in the corner of the courtyard. Uchiha style, sword leap thunderclap. The powerful slash cut off Tobirama's escape route. With Kyosuke attacking at incredible speed, Tobirama had no choice but to brace himself and try to withstand the blows. Luckily, they had reached the outdoors, where he could finally use his most skilled water-style technique. He quickly performed 2 hand signs, a special water-style technique that only Tobirama knew, which skipped the usual hand signs. The form of the jutsu was also vastly different from usual. Just as the Chidori blade was about to strike, a massive surge of water enveloped Tobirama, spinning rapidly as it continued to rise. Water-style, water formation wall. When the Kusanagi sword struck the wall, its full strength was reduced to less than half. Even the conductivity of the electric current couldn't penetrate to affect Tobirama inside. This brat has really gotten stronger. Kyosuke, about to withdraw his blade, suddenly noticed the water volume on the ground rapidly increasing. The water formation wall he faced had become a tornado, rapidly spinning upward and sweeping Kyosuke into its grasp before he could react. This was Tobirama Senju's improved water-style technique, water-style, water tornado. It's not over yet. Tobirama's eyes burned with fury as he clapped his hands together. The water tornado, which had not yet dissipated, instantly changed shape, resembling a giant dragon that seemed to swallow the mountains and rivers, carrying tremendous power as it dragged Kyosuke underground. Water-style, water dragon bullet technique. This combo would seriously injure even his elder brother, Hashirama. While Tobirama admitted Kyosuke was strong, he didn't believe Kyosuke's physique could compare to his brother's. The battle was over. You were ultimately defeated by your arrogance. Tobirama crossed his arms in front of his chest, his expression full of the satisfaction of a victor. He did not kill Kyosuke for 2 reasons. First, circumstances wouldn't allow it. At present, the Senju also sought to avoid reigniting conflict. The other reason was that his older brother was right there, and he knew Hashirama would never allow him to kill Kyosuke. Tobirama. Ultimately, I'm still the stronger one. Tobirama. You were the first, but soon, Madara Uchiha will also fall to my older brother. Tobirama. The booming roar, as sudden as a thunderclap in a clear sky, jolted Tobirama out of his thoughts. When he snapped back to reality, there was no sign of Kyosuke lying injured on the ground. Apart from the utterly devastated courtyard, all that remained was the broad, sturdy back of his elder brother, Hashirama. What just happened? Shaking his head vigorously, Tobirama seemed unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. Seeing this, Hashirama gave a bitter smile and explained. From the moment Kyosuke rushed out of the house, you were caught in his Ganjutsu. This fight was your loss. Ganjutsu? Since when did Kyosuke become so proficient in Ganjutsu? To trap me without me noticing. His Ganjutsu mastery. Tobirama clenched his fists, his expression filled with frustration. He couldn't believe he had been defeated like this when he still had trump cards left to play. Upon learning that Kyosuke was coming, Tobirama's first instinct was to kill him and avenge his uncle. But after exchanging a few moves, Tobirama gradually calmed down, realizing that now was not the time to kill him. He initially thought a light beating would suffice to vent his anger, but instead, he ended up being the one taught a lesson. Tobirama's current mood could only be described as akin to a constipated patient who was just about to find relief, only to realize his hemorrhoids had ruptured. Every moment spent here felt like an unbearable torment. At least Big Brother is here, he thought, falling silent. On the other hand, Kyosuke didn't pay attention to Hashirama's attempt to stop him. Given the previous incident where he beat up Tobirama, it was impossible for the bowl-cut ninja to stand by and watch his little brother get turned into a punching bag. Let's stop this fighting, shall we? Hashirama said with a wry smile, waving his hand while shooting signals to Hyuga Tenjin nearby. After all, they were on the Hyuga clan's territory, and as long as the head of the Hyuga clan spoke up, the fight would surely not escalate. Mediate? Hyuga Tenjin silently surveyed his ruined courtyard, his face dark as if it were the bottom of a pot. Especially his beloved flowers, which now looked like underwear left unwashed for 2 months. Utterly indescribable in their wretched state. Mediate? He wanted nothing more than to personally beat up Tobirama. No matter how much Hashirama tried to signal with his eyes, Tenjin acted as if he didn't see it at all. Helpless, Hashirama could only smile bitterly and soften his stance. Stop causing trouble. If we start fighting, everything around here will be destroyed. How about I just consider it my loss? Your loss? Kyosuke raised an eyebrow, his words becoming sharper. With that kind of resolve, you think you can end the centuries-old grudge between our clans? Then what do you want? It's simple. Kyosuke said, stepping closer to Hashirama with a smile. I'm carrying out a task for Madara. He asked me to bring you a gift, and I can't go back on my word. As he stood right in front of Hashirama, Kyosuke smiled and continued. Everyone knows I'm a man of my word. How could I make an exception for you? A gift? Hashirama's expression turned eager as he rubbed his hands together, looking like a client hearing the footsteps of their awaited masseuse. Yes, a very special gift. Kyosuke slowly raised his hand, and in the astonished gazes of everyone present, he slapped Hashirama so hard that he was sent flying. Do you like it? Chapter 104, The Second Battle, Kyosuke vs Hashirama. Such action even made the usually good-natured Hashirama a little angry. As his younger brother, Tobirama drew his long sword, intending to charge forward and fight to the death. However, he was stopped by his older brother. I need an explanation, Hashirama said, looking at his old friend. To his surprise, Kyosuke shrugged helplessly and said. I already said it. This is the gift Madara sent you. Oh, he also said that if that guy really slapped you, you might as well just kill him directly. Hashirama. Tobirama. They stood there in a daze for a few seconds, and suddenly, Hashirama seemed to understand Madara's intentions. He blamed me for not stopping our uncle and the others from attempting to kill Kyosuke. Now that I think about it, I do owe Kyosuke an apology. Under the strange gazes of everyone, Hashirama took 2 steps forward and slowly brought his right cheek close. I'm telling you, don't try this with me, Kyosuke said, then glanced at Hyuga Tenjin, who was planning to watch the situation, and a wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I know the purpose of your visit, but unfortunately, the head of the Hyuga clan has already agreed to the Uchiha's alliance request. As for the reason, he believes in the future of me and Madara. In 10 years, the Senju will surely fall into our hands. Upon hearing this, both brothers turned their heads and glared angrily. Even Hashirama was struggling to control the wild power within him. He had let someone slap his left cheek and then brought his right cheek forward, not because he had developed some strange interest over the course of a year. Taking a slap willingly was partly to atone for what he owed Kyosuke, but more importantly, it was a signal. Look, I've already overlooked my uncle's death and even personally apologized to the killer. If your Hyuga clan joins us, you'll definitely be the second biggest power in the Land of Fire. So, Hyuga Tennin, did you understand? To be honest, Kyosuke didn't quite understand the deeper meaning behind it. He just wanted to find an excuse to test Hashirama's strength. At present, Madara Uchiha had already reached the peak of elite Jonin strength, combined with his skilled use of the Sharingan. Confronting someone who had just entered the clan leader level was no problem at all. Madara was 2 years older than him, so it wasn't surprising that he had reached such a level of power. Besides, Kyosuke had long suspected that Indra's chakra was beginning to influence Madara. Otherwise, how could that guy's chakra grow so rapidly? Then what about Hashirama Senshu, who was 3 years older than Kyosuke? What kind of incredible strength would he possess? Only by understanding this could Kyosuke start thinking about his next steps. As he had once told both of them, to resolve the hatred between the 2 clans, they must first become the leaders of their respective families. Tajima Uchiha, Senju Batsuma, you 2 old fossils have lived long enough. That's right, Kyosuke was preparing to make a move on the 2 clan leaders. Of course, this plan would be fraught with challenges. Not to mention, when he killed Tajima, he absolutely couldn't let outsiders know. Otherwise, not to mention how Madara and Izuna would view him, but he definitely wouldn't be able to stay in the Uchiha clan. This didn't align with Kyosuke's plan. At the very least, he wasn't someone who wanted to wander the shinobi world as a lonely outcast. It would be so fun to establish Hidden Leaf Village and become the first Hokage. The best approach would be to shift the blame onto Senju Batsuma. The Senju clan committed a grave act by plotting an ambush against Tajima Uchiha, the leader of the Uchiha clan. After a fierce battle, he ultimately lost his life. Kyosuke Uchiha, filled with rage, launched an attack and killed Senju Batsuma, avenging the clan leader's death. How smooth would that sound? Power, status, credits, and fame. All in one go. At that time, he would raise his arms, rally the people to defeat the Senju, and take the lead in establishing the Hidden Leaf Village. Then, when the Hidden Leaf Village was established, he could push the damn Senju to the corners of the village. Oh, and he could also assign them to the duties of the Hidden Leaf Village police force. Don't say Kyosuke is deliberately targeting them, he's just taking precautions. After all, they are the inherently evil Senju clan. Hyuga clan, Rear Mountain Training Ground. No matter how Tenshin thought about it, Hashirama couldn't accept the consequences of failing the mission. Kyosuke wanted a fight, so Hashirama would just play along. Looking at his friend, standing 20 meters away, Hashirama took a deep breath, his hands locking tightly together. Wood style, tree-bind flourishing burial. A massive surge of chakra erupted, and within a 20-meter radius, tree saplings began to sprout from the ground. In the blink of an eye, the saplings transformed into large trees, beginning to move in an orderly fashion around Kyosuke. Same old trick, Hashirama. Kyosuke said with a faint smile, his expression full of mockery towards the bull-cut head. Earlier, during their battle, he had been unable to break through the blockade of tree-bind flourishing burial, and that cost him the chance to defeat his opponent. But now, a mere forest was nothing. He could easily destroy it with a wave of his hand. Kyosuke bit his right thumb and slammed his palm onto the ground. Summoning jutsu. A huge cloud of smoke erupted, and a giant snake, Kiti, appeared beneath him. Kyosuke-sama. Hide greeted respectfully with a bow. Without wasting time, Kyosuke pointed ahead with one hand and spoke with a light smile. Charge, crush this damn forest. As you command. The summoned beast moved. Despite its seemingly clumsy appearance, Kiti was extraordinarily agile. Using its massive length and strength, it completely ignored the sea of trees beneath it and charged directly toward Hashirama. Summon beast, huh? His techniques are still as varied as ever. Hashirama laughed heartily, seeming pleased with Kyosuke's growth. He was already quite silly, and now his laughter made him look even more foolish. Kyosuke twitched the corner of his mouth as the curse mark on his shoulder began to spread across his body. He knew Hide wouldn't be able to harm Hashirama. The summoning was only meant to close the distance between them. Unfortunately, your summoning beast is useless against me. Hashirama's laughter faded, and he extended his hand toward the aggressively charging Hide. Tree branches spread wildly, binding the giant beast in place. Wood style, smothering binding technique. With such ease, Hashirama neutralized the adult serpent from Rishi Cave, making his strength even more terrifying than Kyosuke had imagined. Kyosuke-sama. Hide continued to struggle, trying to break free. Go back for now. Kyosuke said, and as he spoke, he entered his second curse mark state and flapped his wings, soaring above his opponent. Black lightning gathered around him, and he shot down from the sky like a bomb. Wailing Chidori. As for Hashirama, he was still slowly directing the growth of the large trees, using the continuous surge of wood to block the attack. In his second curse mark state, Kyosuke's power was greatly amplified, and his Wailing Chidori now had the destructive power comparable to an S-rank jutsu. However, no matter how strong it was, it couldn't withstand the continuous grinding of Hashirama's wood style. In this contest of spear versus shield, wood style ultimately triumphed. It's no use. Kyosuke focused and calmed his mind as an irregular six-pointed star pattern suddenly appeared in his eyes. Mangekyo Sharingan, activate. The six-pointed star in his right eye spun wildly, and the trees blocking his path mysteriously began to fade away. What? Hashirama's expression finally changed, and he tried to respond. Unfortunately, Kyosuke's Kusanagi sword had already been unsheathed, and in an instant, he slashed across Hashirama's chest, leaving a deep wound. Uchiha style, sword leap thunder. Hashirama was injured. Chapter 105, Wood style, deep forest emergence. Blood spattered sharply through the air, forcing Hashirama to narrow his eyes. The brutal reality of Kyosuke's decision not to hold back left the bull-cut youth momentarily silent. On the other side, Kyosuke ignored the trees converging around him and flung out a large handful of pre-prepared explosive tags. Careful, it's going to blow. As the tags ignited, he utilized the flying thunder god to escape to safety just before the explosion erupted. Boom. 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 The successive blasts roared across the battlefield, drawing the attention of everyone present. Among them, Tenjin Hyuga and the others tensed up, darkly wondering if the young Senju clan leader had perished in the explosions. Ironically, the one who should have been the most concerned, Obirama, remained calm and composed from beginning to end. He knew his brother's strength, mere explosive tags were no threat to Hashirama. Instead, Tobirama found himself far more intrigued by Kyosuke's display of the Flying Thunder God. Almost unconsciously, his hand reached into his tool pouch, where a specially crafted kunai of Kyosuke's design was tucked away. Over the course of an entire year, he had gradually unraveled the secret of spatial coordinates, to the point where he could now erase Kyosuke's mark. The next step would be deepening his understanding of space itself while refining his research on the coordinates. If successful, he would essentially have stolen the Flying Thunder God from his adversary. Humphrey. I must admit, stealing ninjutsu from a mortal enemy brings a certain satisfaction. Too bad, that's an experience you'll never get to enjoy. In the center of the battlefield, the mass of trees parted to reveal a shield shaped like a demonic face bearing its fangs. Wood-style, wood expulsion jutsu. A formidable defensive wood-style technique, undoubtedly ranking among Hashirama's most powerful jutsu. So you've even mastered the wood expulsion jutsu? Kyosuke exhaled deeply, realizing that this man might be even stronger than he had initially imagined. Enough of this. Hashirama said, emerging from behind the wooden shield, his voice heavier and more serious than before. Don't push me. There are some technique even I cannot fully control. Oh? The moment I call you out, you start acting dramatic? Kyosuke ignored his showy antics, pulling out a Flying Thunder God kunai and hurling it toward Hashirama with deliberate precision. If brute force couldn't prevail, then he would rely on speed to determine the outcome. Clang. 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 The kunai ricocheted off each other midair, eventually landing behind Hashirama in an almost unbelievable trajectory. In the blink of an eye, Kyosuke's figure materialized, his Kusanagi sword enveloped in dense black lightning. Uchiha style, wailing thunderclap. Yet, Hashirama seemed completely oblivious to Kyosuke's sudden appearance, his hands still clasped together, calmly gathering chakra. Oh! With an enraged roar, a vast forest of trees suddenly shot up from the ground, quickly surrounding Kyosuke. Such rapid growth. Forced to change his target, he swung his sword, cleaving through the approaching trees with destructive force. Under the wailing thunderclap, Hashirama's wood style appeared as fragile as paper pulp. In the brief moments Kyosuke took to catch his breath, more trees began to close in around him. No, it was more accurate to say that within a 3-kilometer radius, countless towering trees had already taken root. Were an ordinary person here, they would struggle to even glimpse the treetops above. Experience my strongest jutsu, Kyosuke. Hashirama bellowed, his entire being radiating boundless life force. Wood style, deep forest emergence. Kyosuke swiftly dodged the attack of the thick branches, running along the trunks while silently surveying his surroundings. As far as his eyes could see, there were nothing but enormous trees. Even with his keen eyesight, he could not spot an exit. In the face of such overwhelming ninjutsu, numbers lose their significance. He cut down a massive tree stretching from his rear with his sword, silently marveling at the sharpness of the Kusanagi. Without it, his response would have been many times more difficult. Even so, he knew he had to find a solution quickly. Otherwise, would he have to compete in endurance with Senju Hashirama? Should I use Flying Thunder God? No, I can feel that the spatial coordinates are all moving, which means that Hashirama has wrapped up all the kunai. Even Flying Thunder God would not be able to escape the forest's encirclement, let alone techniques like shadow clones or chidori. He hurled a kunai from a distance, carefully maneuvering it through the spatial shifts to evade multiple attacks. However, as soon as he materialized, the same scenario unfolded once again. Kyosuke didn't even have a chance to retrieve the kunai. His chidori spear extended to its limit, instantly clearing a wide space, buying him a few precious seconds to catch his breath. Huff. Huff. Chakra consumption is too severe, I must find a solution quickly. The deep forest emergence is a powerful wood-style technique that requires the user's chakra to serve as the very source of life in order to activate it. The principle is simple, towering trees rapidly grow from the ground, covering vast stretches of mountain and plains. With an overwhelming number, Hashirama can conjure a forest in the blink of an eye, using his abilities to create a dense, expansive woodland in an instant. What makes it most formidable is that everything within the forest is under the user's control. This means that Hashirama can perceive Kyosuke's every move with perfect clarity. On the other hand, Kyosuke has completely lost track of his opponent, unable to discern where Hashirama might be hidden in the endless sea of trees. Should I forcibly use the power of my right eye? Staring at the vast, sun-blocking environment, Kyosuke shook his head, understanding that even if he sacrificed his vision in the process, it would not be enough to counter Hashirama's wood style. Kyosuke, enough already. Hashirama's voice echoed from a distance, and it was not difficult to hear the pain he was desperately trying to suppress. It seemed that Hashirama was still not fully in control of the deep forest emergence, and was likely enduring the intense chakra drain from using it. You've already pushed yourself this hard, so why should I retreat now? Slowly deactivating his cursed seal, Kyosuke's eyes narrowed, and an irregular six-pointed star pattern reappeared within his eyes. Upon seeing this, Hashirama's mind flashed back to their previous encounter. He had thought that Kyosuke would repeat the same trick, so he had no intention of holding back. A massive tree trunk, large enough for several people to encircle, struck from multiple angles. Front, back, and sides. Expecting Kyosuke to dodge, Hashirama was surprised when the tree trunks completely encircled him, yet he made no attempt to evade. Hashirama's exceptional perception told him that Kyosuke's real body had indeed been struck by the tree trunks. Enduring the discomfort in his body, he halted the continuation of the jutsu. No matter what, Hashirama didn't want to personally kill his friend. "I'll just give up on the Hyuga alliance," he thought to himself. In his heart, both Madara and Kyosuke were far more important than the Hyuga clan. After all, the three of them were the true companions who shared the same ideals. Just as the tree trunks were about to withdraw, a flash of golden light suddenly shone through the gaps, illuminating the area. Crack! The thick tree trunks were violently shattered from the inside, and as the dust settled, Kyosuke's true form stood before him. At this moment, Kyosuke's Mangekyo Sharingan gleamed brilliantly, and a dark golden skeletal frame enveloped him. "Come on, let's continue this interesting battle." The third power. Susanoo. Chapter 106, Susanoo's destruction in the forest of trees. Susanoo, the third form of power that dwells within the Mangekyo Sharingan. It is also known as the power of the gods. It is said that those who have witnessed it with their own eyes are fated to die. An indication of Susanoo's overwhelming might. Susanoo manifests as a tangible form of chakra, allowing its user to stand within and receive protection from the humanoid construct of chakra. As the user moves, Susanoo follows, mirroring their intentions and executing any action as commanded. Depending on the user's mastery and the strength of their ocular powers, Susanoo is divided into several distinct stages. The initial form manifests as skeletal arms and ribs. This form can be used for offense, defense, protection, and control. Though it appears fragile, it is capable of deflecting most attacks. Just moments ago, Kyosuke had used his dark golden, initial stage Susanoo to block the oncoming wood-style assault. The results were impressive. At the very least, it allowed him to avoid unnecessary consumption of energy. Most critically, the chakra surrounding him burned and twisted like flames. Beside the ethereal ribs, a dark golden energy arm materialized. Clutched within its hand was a Kusanagi sword, identical to Kyosuke's own. A weapon seemingly constructed of pure energy. In that moment, Kyosuke finally understood why Indra had once journeyed to Richi Cave in pursuit of the Kusanagi sword. It turned out that, much like the Totsuka blade, the Kusanagi sword could also be integrated into Susanoo's form for combat. Though it lacked sealing powers and could not reflect physical damage like the Yata mirror, its strength was far simpler. Pure, unrelenting destruction. "He's over there." Through their brief exchange of words earlier, Kyosuke had successfully pinpointed Hashirama's position. His gaze shifted to the 7 o'clock direction. Without hesitation, he sprang forward, charging toward his target with astounding speed. Sigh. From deep within the forest, a faint sigh seemed to echo. Soft and almost imperceptible. Unfortunately, the sound never reached Kyosuke's ears. A battle is a battle. There is no need for such unnecessary theatrics. Once he defeated him, Hashirama could sigh as much as he pleased. Amidst the resistance coming at him from all directions, Kyosuke's pace remained unbroken. The ethereal arm of Susanoo swung violently, and the surrounding trees shattered and splintered under the Kusanagi sword's might. Second wave. Third wave. The entire forest seemed to come alive, as though intent on crushing the insignificant humans within it to dust. However, the Kusanagi sword was simply too sharp. Enhanced by Susanoo's energy, its destructive power multiplied several-fold in an instant. Blocking it head-on would hardly last to the end. But never forget, speed had always been Kyosuke's greatest advantage. Amid the flying splinters of wood, he forcefully carved open a path leading straight to where his opponent stood. "You can't hide anymore, Hashirama." Kyosuke's wild hair fluttered in the air, his unrestrained ferocity on full display. His entire being radiated an overwhelming fighting spirit. Enduring the excruciating, needle-like pain coursing through his body, he tore through the final obstruction and emerged before a visibly drenched, sweat-soaked Hashirama. You really are something, Kyosuke," remarked the Senju clan's young leader, already prepared and holding a broad-bladed greatsword in his hand. As the chakra surged, the pale blue blade extended instantly to 3 meters, standing nearly on par with the illusory Kusanagi sword. No further words were exchanged. The two immediately clashed. Faced with Susanoo's overpowering pressure, Hashirama gritted his teeth and refused to take a single step back, entering a contest of sheer strength. Likewise, Kyosuke abandoned any ostentatious attack techniques. It was as if he were playing a game of whack-a-mole, striking at Hashirama repeatedly with one blow after another. By the 17th strike, it was Hashirama who could no longer hold on. Blood gushed from his mouth, his aura instantly plummeting. Seeing this, Kyosuke commanded Susanoo to deliver a single punch that sent Hashirama flying, effectively marking the end of their second confrontation. Cough, cough. As soon as he withdrew Susanoo, Kyosuke fell painfully to his knees, and for a moment, he genuinely felt as though he might go blind. Every cell in my body is trembling. Damn it, this thing's burden is even worse than the cursed seal. At this moment, Kyosuke felt a flicker of fear. He had no desire to end up like that second brother. Awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan only to go completely blind in a matter of days. To be precise, Sasuke had made several levels of leaps the very day he awakened Susanoo, successfully triggering the terrifying third form. In its initial state, Susanoo manifests ribs and arms. The first form takes on a skeletal appearance, with the chakra fully enveloping the body and enhancing its defensive capabilities. The second form builds upon the skeleton, developing muscles and tendons, which are ultimately encased by a cloak-like layer of chakra. At this stage, Susanoo can manifest unique weapons, such as energy swords, bows and arrows, or the Yasukani Magatama. The third form sees Susanoo clad in a layer of Karasuteng armor, significantly boosting its defenses and broadening its arsenal to include weapons like the Totsuka blade and the sword of Kusanagi. The fourth form does not increase Susanoo's power further but instead manifests its lower body. This greatly increases its size while also granting it notable mobility. The fifth form, often referred to as the perfect Susanoo, represents its ultimate evolution. Only those whose ocular power has reached a certain limit and who possess vast chakra reserves can unlock Susanoo's higher forms. At this stage, Susanoo's size becomes extraordinarily immense, towering to a height comparable to that of a small mountain. An ordinary person standing at its feet would scarcely exceed the size of its shoes. As for the power of the fully formed Susanoo, it can be aptly described as capable of splitting mountains and shattering the earth. With ease, it can reshape the terrain within a 10-kilometer radius. Beyond this lies the even more formidable ultimate Susanoo, a form achieved only when Sasuke absorbed the chakra of all nine-tailed beasts. This marked the peak of the second brother's power, granting him destructive capabilities surpassing even Indra himself. With his current Mangekyo Sharingan, Kyosuke could at most manifest the third form of Susanoo. Like Itachi and Sasuke, he could clad the chakra cloak with the Karasuteng armor. Considering the abilities he currently possessed, there was a possibility that, upon mastering Sage Chakra, he could create a unique Sage Susanoo. To unlock the perfect Susanoo, the ideal method would be to awaken the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Alternatively, he could acquire a high-level Sage body, using its immense chakra reserves to compensate for his insufficient ocular power. However, such an approach would inevitably result in Susanoo's instability. Thus, the best option remained the awakening of the eternal Mangekyo. At this thought, Kyosuke couldn't help but think of his cousin, Kaijan Uchiha, far off on the other side of the Land of Fire. Grow stronger quickly. I can't wait any longer. His goal was crystal clear, to find a way to trigger his cousin's Mangekyo Sharingan and use his cousin's eyes to catalyze his own evolution. Doing so would allow him to save a significant amount of points and resources. Why wouldn't he seize the opportunity? As for whether this plan might spiral out of control, with Kaijan Uchiha growing beyond his grasp, Kyosuke remained utterly unconcerned. The blade had already struck. A power against which Kaijan Uchiha could never hope to contend. There was nothing to fear. All Kyosuke needed to do now was wait patiently. Chapter 107, I will fight alongside you before long. Everyone gathered in the meeting room. After listening to Kyosuke's account, the two brothers, Hashirama and Tobirama, finally understood the terrifying chaos engulfing the Land of Rain. So, it seems I was indeed wrong to stop the Hyuga clan. Hashirama reflected silently, guilt weighing on his mind. Kyosuke glanced at the man with his distinct bowl haircut, now awash with regret, and inwardly sighed. Sometimes, this guy's thought process was truly incomprehensible. Moreover, even though he had clearly won the battle, judging by their current conditions, it felt as if he was the one who had lost. Within a mere half hour, Hashirama was already lively and energetic again, while Kyosuke was still suffering from the after-effects of overusing his ocular powers. It was utterly baffling. On the other hand, Tobirama's thoughts were vastly different from his elder brothers. With the Hidden Moon Village clan displaying such dominance, the Uchiha were bound to suffer devastating losses. At that point, the Senju could easily take control of the Land of Fire without lifting a finger. As for how the Senju would deal with the enemy should the Uchiha fail, Tobirama didn't bother to consider it. To him, the threat posed by the Uchiha far outweighed that of any unknown adversary. If the two sides could destroy each other, that would be the ideal outcome. This was the fundamental difference between him and Hashirama. It wasn't just a disparity in strength but also an unbridgeable gap in character and vision. His reckless use of forbidden techniques such as summoning, impure world reincarnation, his paranoid stance against the Uchiha, and his almost childish method of selecting the third Hokage. All of these reflected his flaws. To think that the criteria for Hokage succession boiled down to who was willing to die for the him. It was an absurd and capricious notion. The result? The third Hokage lacked the prestige necessary for his role, plunging Hidden Leaf Village into a fragmented state of power struggles. Even Denzo, in his final moments, remained haunted by the events of that day. And this was just one of many such examples. Even upon being revived through summoning, impure world reincarnation, knowing full well that Itachi Uchiha had saved the shinobi world, Tobirama's first reaction upon hearing that Sasuke harbored hatred toward Hidden Leaf Village was to consider killing him. In many ways, his stubbornness rivaled that of the Uchiha themselves. Moreover, his obstinacy left no room for outside advice or differing opinions. Kyosuke, well aware of Tobirama's personality, had never held any expectations of him from the start. Now you understand, don't you? Kyosuke coughed lightly, his gaze sincere as he addressed Hashirama. I'd like to know, as the clan's young leader, how you intend to respond to a disaster that could engulf the entire land of fire. Elder brother. Tobirama immediately interjected, his voice sharp. Don't be swayed by him. Don't forget what he's done before. Hashirama placed a firm hand on his brother's shoulder and silenced him with a stern look. Tobirama, who had never seen his elder brother glare at him before, felt an unexpected pang of grievance in his heart. Taking a deep breath, Hashirama rose from his chair, his expression solemn as he made his promise to the two. I will do my best to persuade our father to send troops. The disasters of the Land of Fire shouldn't fall solely on the Uchiha to bear. And if Batsuma refuses? Kyosuke asked. For once, he held back the words that scum out of respect for Hashirama's sincerity. As he spoke, Kyosuke glanced at Tobirama, who stood nearby with a fierce glare, then subtly raised his chin, gesturing toward his companion. Take a look. If you can't even convince your own brother, how do you plan to persuade someone as stubborn as Batsuma Senju? From the main seat, Hyuga Tenjin frowned, thinking to himself that Kyosuke was pushing his luck a bit too far. The fact that the Senju hadn't sent troops to ambush the Uchiha was already a generous move. Expecting someone like Batsuma, that old relic, to send troops in assistance? You might as well hope the enemy suddenly grows a conscience and decides to become monks in the Land of Fire's temples. It'd be more realistic. And yet, in the very next moment, Hashirama's reply was like a resounding slap to his assumptions. If father refuses, Hashirama said with a smile, looking earnestly at his friend. Then I will join the defense as an individual. When that time comes, I'll be counting on you. Brother. Ignoring his younger brother's protests, Hashirama was resolute this time. He was determined to rebuild the bonds of friendship. In his eyes, only through such actions could the trust of the Uchiha be earned. If uniting the two clans and making peace meant stepping down as the Senju's young leader, Hashirama was willing to do so, knowing that his younger brother Tobirama could take over. Kyosuke silently stared at Hashirama, his expression seemingly shaken. But in truth, his heart was utterly calm, even bordering on amusement. The feud between the Senju and Uchiha could never be resolved through negotiation alone. For them to join forces, one side would have to take control over the other. A great war was inevitable. It was only a matter of time. And when that time came, the scale of the conflict would reach terrifying new heights. Hashirama's personal involvement in the battle would only bolster his reputation, but it wouldn't change the Uchiha's overall stance toward their enemies. As always, resolving such deep-seated conflicts would require a heavy-handed approach and a long period of time to erode the grudges that had lasted for generations. What a sigh-worthy situation, Kyosuke thought, as he extended his right hand toward Hashirama. I look forward to the day we fight side by side. That evening, Kyosuke stayed at the Hyuga household. Using his exhaustion as an excuse, he retired early to his room, preparing to use the Flying Thunder God technique to meet with Yaoi. Unexpectedly, before he could act, Yaoi herself appeared, wearing a thin shirt that clung lightly to her frame. Aren't you worried Tenjin will find out? Kyosuke thought, surprised by her boldness. Could her influence have grown so much already? To act this openly. Hey! Hyuga Yaoi let out a cold laugh, her expression laced with self-mockery. He sent me here himself. Naturally, there's no reason to worry about being discovered. As she spoke, she deliberately gestured to the thin shirt she was wearing. How thin was it exactly? Let's put it this way, with just a slight movement, Kyosuke could feel her entire body trembling. That old bastard Tenjin Hyuga actually sent his disciple to do something like this. It was clear that Yaoi had likely lost her position as the future head's wife of the family. Kyosuke didn't know the exact reasons behind this change, But from the looks of it, she didn't seem inclined to explain either. With a helpless shake of his head, the young man asked quietly, "How's the research going?" When the topic turned to serious matters, a trace of subtle disappointment flashed across the woman's face. She quickly composed herself, though, and began to speak about the results of her year-long research. Currently, Yewei has mastered highly advanced techniques in cell cultivation and transplantation. She had even replaced the Otsutsuki cells within her body several times, hoping to use herself as a vessel to merge the bloodlines of the two clans. Unfortunately, she hadn't yet realized the issue with her Byakugan, which meant no matter how many times she tried, she couldn't activate the Tenseigan. Kyosuke had come this time with the intention of giving her some guidance. He also planned to introduce her to the next phase of her research. Cell cloning technology. This was a massive project. Even with existing data to follow, it would take her years to fully comprehend it. As for the Tenseigan, without the help of an energy vessel, its full awakening would be a long and arduous journey. By the time she reached the level of Otsutsuki Tonarai, Kyosuke might have already unlocked the Rinnegan himself. Chapter 108, Invasion of the Land of Wind. Hashirama rushes to aid the Uchiha using the power of the Tenseigan as leverage. Kyosuke successfully gained the support of the Hyuga clan. Early the next morning, news arrived from the front lines. A massive puppet army had landed in the Land of Fire, leaving devastation in its wake wherever it passed, and its forces were heading straight for the heartland of the Uchiha clan. Prepared for the onslaught, Tajima Uchiha personally led the army to meet the enemy. A full-scale battle had already erupted between the two forces. Time was of the essence, and Hyuga Tenjin immediately led his forces to depart, aiming to travel 1,000 miles a day in order to assist the Uchiha. There was no choice, the situation was urgent. In just half a day, the Uchiha's frontline positions had already fallen back by 30 miles. If they didn't act quickly, by the time they arrived, they would likely only be able to collect the bodies. At this point, the major clans finally realized just how terrifying the enemy's strength was. Under normal circumstances, if the clans united, defeating the enemy would be a matter of minutes. However, despite their fear, no clan extended a helping hand to the Uchiha. The reason was simple: these clans believed that the enemy from the Land of Rain would not necessarily wipe out everyone. If they truly wanted to conquer the Land of Fire, they could always escape to another country if necessary. As for the Uchiha clan, they had always prided themselves on their strength. Let's see if they could withstand the overwhelming puppet army. Such a mindset was widespread among the clans, and to be fair, their relationship with the Uchiha was far from close. Yet, none of them knew that the enemy was not merely seeking domination but intended to completely eradicate the entire shinobi world. Once the living beings of the Land of Fire were slaughtered, the enemy would have amassed a puppet army numbering in the millions. At that point, no matter where anyone fled, they would face certain death. The ninja world, despite its name, was home to many ordinary people. For instance, there were famous entertainment cities, gambling hubs, livestock cities, and small towns nestled by mountains and rivers, many of which were scattered throughout the Land of Fire. Ninja villages were merely gathering places for ninjas. In terms of scale, they were not even comparable to the daimyo's castles, let alone the many large towns. This clearly showed that the existence of the daimyo was essential. If Hidden Leaf Village were to take charge, with such a small number of people, they wouldn't even be able to establish a basic political structure. Understanding the gravity of the situation, everyone knew how crucial it was to protect the borders of the country. If the enemy truly breached the Land of Fire, it would be a slaughter of unimaginable proportions. Both the Uchiha and Hyuga had chosen to send troops to resist. However, upon hearing the news, Senju Batsuma scoffed at it. Southeast of the Land of Fire, in the Senju clan's territory. It's impossible, absolutely impossible. Batsuma glared at his son with an expression of frustration. Hashirama, wake up. This is most likely the enemy's scheme. But father. Holding a battle report from the front, Hashirama appeared hesitant, his thoughts seemingly tangled. He wanted to ask, what kind of conspiracy would cause the Uchiha to suffer such significant losses? If things were truly as Kyosuke had said, this couldn't possibly be the matter of just one or two clans. This was an all-out war for the Land of Fire. Unfortunately, still a person of little influence, Hashirama was not able to convince his father to change his mind. Hashirama. Batsuma continued to try to influence him, attempting to promote the idea that the Uchiha would always be the enemy. However, before he could say much, Hashirama excused himself, citing feeling unwell, and left. Sigh. Batsuma sighed, then turned to his other son and commanded. Obirama, keep an eye on your brother. Don't let him do anything that would disgrace the name of the Senju clan. Understood. Obirama also left the room. But to be honest, He himself was feeling a bit uncertain now. Kyosuke might lie, but the Uchiha's casualty reports couldn't be fabricated. If the situation was real, it could be even more dangerous than he had imagined. Father, perhaps this time, Big Brother is right. If we don't take action, the Senju name will be destroyed. Soon, he found his older brother, who was sneaking around. Sigh. Looking at the figure before him, Tobirama sighed and said, "Even if you're sneaking out, you should at least avoid being seen by people. Can we stop acting like we're about to cause trouble?" Hey. At this moment, Hashirama wasn't foolish. He quickly sensed his younger brother's change in attitude. He nudged his brother with his elbow, and the two whispered to each other for a while before using training outside the village as an excuse to leave the clan. Batsuma probably never imagined that his two sons would betray him together. "Actually, Tobirama, you don't need to come with me. I'm free. Regardless of Madara and Kyosuke, don't you know what kind of person Tajima is? He shouldn't show up." "Big brother, shut up. Hashirama, come fine." The Uchiha fought desperately against the Hidden Moon Village clan, while the Senju brothers rushed thousands of miles to provide aid. As for Kyosuke, he had not yet been able to reunite with his clan. Not long ago, news came from the southern battlefield. Several families from the Land of Wind had united and sent a large army towards the borders of the Land of Fire. Faced with this hostile force, Rei Uchiha took the lead and personally joined the battle, commanding the southern army. The outcome was disastrous. The enemy's strength far exceeded expectations, and the southern army began to falter under the pressure. After a brief discussion, Kyosuke decided to go alone to provide reinforcements, while Hyuga Tenjin continued towards the main battlefield. There can't be this much coincidence in the world. The Fuma clan has ties with the Hidden Moon Village clan, and it's most likely Black Zetsu pulling the strings. Looking at it now, this army from the Land of Wind probably has a similar situation. These issues weren't hard to guess, but the key was that he couldn't fathom Black Zetsu's true purpose. This great filial son, no matter what he did, was ultimately trying to fulfill the grand ideal of splitting the moon to save his mother. Thus, everything he did should be related to that goal. From this perspective, it seemed unlikely that Black Zetsu would stand by and let the Uchiha clan be wiped out. At least not until he had enough pieces on the board. Otherwise, who would open the Rinnegan for him? How would he summon the God Tree? From the fact that he allied with the Uzumaki Ashina to trap and kill me, it's clear that I'm not his chosen target. In other words, the person Black Zetsu is preparing to use the backstab technique on is still our poor dance king. In a moment of clarity, Kyosuke seemed to understand something. Could the root cause of this war be to help Madara Uchiha achieve growth? Perhaps unlocking the Mangekyo Sharingan? By eliminating the descendants of Otsutsuki Hamuras and using some method to help Madara and Izuna awaken their eyes. For Black Zetsu, it's basically a perfect way to kill two birds with one stone. Then, who was connected to the two brothers, and whose death could trigger the appearance of the Mangekyo? Just thinking about it for a moment, a familiar figure appeared in Kyosuke's mind. This person was, of course, his most respected clan leader, Tajima Uchiha. Hey, I truly hope Black Zetsu succeeds. Is it bad that I think this way? Ha 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 ha. Chapter 109, Kazekage Ritu, who ended the Sengoku-era Southern Front, Uchiha Army Camp. Ha ha ha. I knew you'd be fine, kid. Elder Rei Uchiha, whom Kyosuke hadn't seen in years, greeted him with a hearty embrace. Returning to the Southern Army felt just like coming home for Kyosuke. Without needing any direction, he found himself a chair and sat down. Just as he was about to inquire about the state of the battle, Elder Rei's expression grew solemn. With a trace of apology in his tone, he began. Upon hearing of your incident, I attempted to rally your troops to my side. Regarding that matter, please, don't. Kyosuke waved his hand with a wry smile and said. Have you forgotten? These men were originally granted to me by you. That's not how it works. We must keep matters separate. I feel. Elder Rei. Kyosuke interrupted, touching his nose as his gaze shifted to the strategic map laid out on the table. Sensing his intent, Elder Rei let the matter drop, and the two of them turned their focus to analyzing the enemy's movements. Who are we up against? Kyosuke asked. Hearing this, Elder Rei mentioned a name that made Kyosuke's eye twitch involuntarily. Have you heard of the Ritu of the Sand? The name carried such weight that even Kyosuke, who rarely paid attention to the affairs of the ninja world, had heard of it. Beyond his terrifying strength, there was one reason this man commanded such serious attention. The man known as Ritu was none other than one of the 5 Kage who ended the Sengoku era. The first Kazekage of Hidden Sand Village. This fact alone was enough to put anyone on high alert. Are you kidding me? What is that bastard doing in the Land of Fire? Isn't his mess in the Land of Wind chaotic enough already? Kyosuke gritted his teeth in frustration. This was a crucial moment. The Hidden Moon Village clan was on the verge of sweeping across the entire Land of Fire. The last thing Kyosuke wanted was to waste time dealing with the Land of Wind's affairs. Yet, here they were, intruding of their own volition. If he didn't fight back, the southern army would undoubtedly be destroyed. With a flick of his wrist, Kyosuke tossed aside a thick stack of reports and turned his attention to another document, one detailing a list of individuals. Starting with Shaman, the second Kazekage of Hidden Sand Village and the creator of the puppet technique. Shaman next on the list was Munzman, the man who perfected the puppet technique and created the infamous the Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets. Then came Watanabe Kaoru, a wielder of the Scorch-style Kekkei Genkai and a devout follower of the first Kazekage, Ritu. This is just too much. Kyosuke muttered as he looked down, feeling as though he were facing off against the entire Land of Wind. He finally understood why Elder Ray had been so insistent about him coming to the southern front as reinforcements. With such a terrifying lineup, unless the Senju or Uchiha clans personally stepped in, the enemy had more than enough power to wreak havoc across the Land of Fire. Even without considering their army, just those 4 individuals are each more troublesome than the last. Judging by my estimate, even the weakest of them, Watanabe Kaoru, likely possesses strength comparable to a clan leader. If I take them on in succession, I'm not sure whether the enemy will survive, but my eyes will definitely be done for. Faced with such formidable opponents all at once, Kyosuke couldn't help but feel a profound sense of isolation and helplessness. After some careful thought, he decided to head to the battlefield himself. His plan was simple: find one of the 4 enemies, eliminate them first, and then reassess the situation. When he shared his thoughts, Elder Ray wholeheartedly supported him. With the Flying Thunder God technique at his disposal, Elder Ray wasn't particularly worried about Kyosuke running into trouble. After all, the main reason Kyosuke had been summoned was to handle these highly troublesome opponents. As for the ordinary forces of the Land of Wind, the Uchiha Southern Army's ninja were no pushovers. Dealing with them wouldn't be a problem. Oh, by the way, Kyosuke, Ray Uchiha asked curiously, have you truly awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan? I have. Kyosuke replied without hesitation, showcasing it directly. Good, good, good. The elder uttered the word good 3 times in succession. It seemed that some heavy burden had finally been lifted from his heart. The Uchiha clan must ultimately rely on you young ones, he said with a tone full of hope. Western region of the Land of Fire, the border with the Land of Rivers. The massive army from the Land of Wind is currently stationed here. As the leader of his faction, Ritu ordinarily wouldn't engage in such large-scale actions. But someone had offered him an irresistible bargain. Lord Ritu. A familiar voice called out from outside the tent. Come in. Unwrapping the scarf around his neck, Ritu let out a quiet sigh and silently calculated the power balance between his forces and the enemy's. The curtain parted, and a burly man with a dragon-shaped tattoo coiling around his right eye strode in. This was none other than Shaman, the founder of puppet techniques in the Land of Wind. To bring together such a fearsome lineup, the offered bargain had to be something none of them could refuse. That bargain was an entire set of techniques for creating human puppets, given as compensation by Black Zetsu to secure their assistance. The objective was simple: to stall Kyosuke's movements. Until Madara and Izuna awakened their Mangekyo Sharingan, Kyosuke could not be allowed to return to the Uchiha encampment. Seeing Shaman looking so pleased, Ritu smiled faintly. It was clear his subordinate had achieved some remarkable results. Lord Ritu, the puppet technique you provided are truly incredible, Shaman said, his voice brimming with excitement. I've completed about 60 to 70% of the process. I just need suitable test subjects to proceed further. Don't worry. Ritu nodded and shared news that delighted his subordinate. Kaoru has already set out with her team. If everything goes as planned, she should bring back several corpses with awakened Kekkei Genkai. That's excellent. Once we fully master the human puppet technique, our power will grow explosively. Then we'll see who dares to challenge us again. Hearing this, Ritu chuckled and dismissed Shaman. Yet, after his subordinate left, Ritu's expression turned somber. Indeed, the human puppet technique was astonishingly powerful, even capable of replicating a ninja's Kekkei Genkai and secret techniques from when they were alive. To offer such an incredible reward, the task they'd been entrusted with could not be an easy one. What seemed like a generous gift had already been marked with a hidden price. But neither Ritu nor his followers knew what that price would ultimately cost them. We must remain ever vigilant, Ritu murmured as he lowered his head, continuing to review intelligence reports regarding the Land of Fire. Along the border, Watanabe Kaoru led her team as they ran along the stream. The Uchiha army responded quickly. She had thought that they would encounter resistance only after they penetrated deep into enemy territory. This works too. At least we won't have any surprises from behind. Watanabe Kaoru smirked, a cruel smile crossing her lips. She estimated that it had been about 3 hours since she last killed someone. She found great enjoyment in the process of drying her enemies into mummies. Back at her home in the Land of Wind, she had countless shriveled corpses on display. Now, she would add the Uchiha name to her collection. Watanabe Kaoru, known for her use of scorch style, was one of the most feared women in the Land of Wind. Her terrifying reputation was enough to silence even the loudest of children. Scorch style. An incredibly terrifying ability that, upon contact with the enemy's body, instantly evaporates the moisture inside. Those who had fought her never lived to tell the tale. They ended up as shriveled, desiccated mummies. Even Munzman, who was usually headstrong and rebellious, rarely dared to provoke her. After all, madwomen are terrifying, and even if one isn't afraid, it's wise to keep a safe distance. Many share this same belief. A madwoman is already dangerous, but a powerful madwoman is a force of destruction. Soon, the Uchiha squad ahead would come to understand this all too well. Chapter 110, Scorch Style User, Watanabe Kaoru and a heart-crushing kill report. No abnormalities found ahead. Good. Everyone, rest here for a while. This small team was responsible for patrolling the border, ensuring that the enemy couldn't sneak around and launch surprise attacks on their camp. After hours of constant searching, the team was mentally and physically exhausted. Reluctantly, the leader gave the order to rest for 10 minutes. Sigh. One of the team member couldn't help but sigh deeply. The others wore expressions of fatigue as well. Such patrol missions meant that if they encountered the enemy, it would be a life-or-death battle. Unless one is a true Jonin-level shinobi, no one else can guarantee that they can survive. War. When will it ever end? Seeing his team's morale falter, the Uchiha leader couldn't help but mention something he had just heard before setting out. Do you all know? Lord Kyosuke has returned. At this, everyone immediately perked up with renewed excitement. Really? That's great. With Lord Kyosuke's return, our southern army will be an absolutely unbeatable force. By the way, do we still have a chance to join the Lord's Legion? Hey, who was the one complaining earlier? You don't get it, things are different now. Unfortunately, the squad leader was just as clueless as his team members. He didn't know any more than they did, and if he had known the details, he would have wanted to join the Legion himself. While the rest of the group chatted enthusiastically, one person in the team remained silent, head lowered. A year ago, news of Kyosuke's death spread within the clan, and various factions had been trying to recruit that invincible army. Responding to an invitation from Rei Uchiha, he had made the decision to return to the southern army. He couldn't be called a deserter, nor could anyone accuse him of betrayal, but there was a lingering sense of guilt in his heart. Now that Kyosuke, the commander, had returned, he felt both happy and deeply ashamed. After a long silence, he slowly spoke up. Indeed, Lord Kyosuke is a commander worth following. The others exchanged looks, their faces awkward. In their excitement, they had completely forgotten about the companion standing beside them, one who had returned from Kyosuke's army. The lively discussion among the group felt like cruelly rubbing salt into an open wound. Actually, the squad leader was about to explain something when he suddenly noticed the terrified expression on his companion's face. His years of battle experience told him that something was happening behind him. With one hand bracing against the ground, he quickly turned around. Before he could activate his Sharingan, a slender but immensely strong hand, as solid as steel, seized his throat with a deadly grip. Why don't you follow me instead? A mocking laugh rang out, and the words were enough to make the Uchiha members seethe with anger. Damn it. The squad leader, despite being held in a chokehold, swiftly shook his wrist, and a kunai appeared in his hand. Even if he had to die today, he would drag the arrogant woman who spoke those words to hell with him. Unfortunately, that kunai never reached its target. Ah! A horrifying scream rang through the forest. The squad leader felt as though he had been placed in a fiery furnace, his blood boiling and the searing heat relentlessly burning through his flesh and bones. In the blink of an eye, all the moisture in his body evaporated, followed by his blood and fat, until he was reduced to a mummified husk, nothing left but skin and bone. Captain. A man from the squad gritted his teeth, quickly forming hand seals with both hands. ZZT. The unmistakable crackle of the Chidori rang out. As a former member of Kyosuke's army, he certainly knew how to use the Chidori technique. With his Sharingan activated, he locked onto the target and charged forward. I'm going to take your life. However, his furious attack was met with nothing but the woman's relentless mockery. You think you can take my life? Ha ha ha, I've heard that you all follow a little brat's orders. I'm really curious, do you also change his diapers for him? Watanabe Kaoru's words were venomous, designed to constantly undermine the enemy's morale. This was her specialty. Killing not just with force, but with cruelty, savoring the twisted pleasure of breaking the spirit before ending life. You are not allowed to insult my lord. The man shouted, his anger reaching its peak. Lightning crackled through the air, and his lightning-charged hand sliced through the space ahead like a spear, aiming with great force. Having already felt guilt toward Kyosuke, hearing the enemy insult him now made the man's mindset erupt with fury. What he didn't realize was that this outburst had played directly into the enemy's trap. The power of Scorch style naturally countered close-range attacks. Not only was physical contact dangerous, but even simply approaching her posed a tremendous risk. For instance, the man's situation was exactly like this. The closer he got to Watanabe Kaoru, the more intense the heat wave became. At 5 meters, he was already struggling to breathe properly. At 3 meters, the scorching air even burned his eyes. Instinctively squinting, he lost sight of his opponent, who vanished from his front in an instant. By the time he stopped, his left arm, with which he had been preparing the Chidori, was completely cooked. Damn it! The Chidori's electric light reappeared as he gritted his teeth and severed his entire left arm. In excruciating pain, he lifted his head, only to find that, apart from himself, the rest of his squad mates had all fallen in pools of blood. It wasn't just Watanabe-kun, the bodyguards following her were just as ruthless. An ordinary squad had no chance against them. A long-forgotten sense of fear suddenly surged from the depths of his heart. Gripping his teeth, he used his lightning style to stimulate his cells and desperately ran in the opposite direction. Ha 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 ha. Behind him, Watanabe-kun's carefree laughter echoed. Hey, you're running already? I've heard that all Uchiha are heroes, but from what I see, you're nothing but a bunch of teddy bears. The intense pain from his severed arm and the overwhelming discomfort coursing through his body caused the man's condition to deteriorate rapidly. Instinctively, he tried to turn and flee, but the woman's cruel words stirred a burning rage within him, compelling him to slow down. Turning back, his Sharingan with two Tomoe glared fiercely at Watanabe-kun. You listen carefully, you damned woman. The Uchiha is not something trash like you can ever insult. The man gathered the last of his chakra, once again condensing a blinding electric light in his palm. This time, even if his eyeballs exploded, he would force his hand deep into the enemy's body. Idiot. Watanabe Kaoru sneered coldly, her mocking expression becoming even more pronounced. In truth, no matter what the man did, it would always end in her ridicule. Proof? What could such a foolish act of rushing to his death prove? That the Uchiha were all brainless fools? If she were in his position, she would have fled at full speed, disappearing without a trace long ago. But now that someone else was suffering, that was a different matter altogether. I can escape, but if you try to run, I will mock you to the fullest. This was Watanabe Kaoru's mindset. A sophisticated and extreme egoist. Now, pay the price for your stupidity. Scorch style, extremely steaming murder. Just as the man was about to meet his end, a violent bolt of lightning descended from the sky, crashing down between them. What did you just say, woman? Kyosuke stood with his arms crossed, his terrifying killing intent causing Watanabe-kun's expression to change dramatically. Chapter 111, Do you know? You're about to die. Gazing at the clan member collapsed on the ground, Kyosuke let out a deep sigh. Paying no attention to the hostile enemies eyeing him intently, he crouched down and used a mystical palm technique to quickly stop the bleeding. Milord, Save your breath. Kyosuke interrupted, gesturing for him to conserve his strength rather than waste it on explanations. Suddenly, a sharp sound of something cutting through the air came from behind. The injured man's face instantly turned pale with shock as he glimpsed what was happening. Not long ago, his captain had died at the hands of this very woman in a similar manner. Could the same tragedy be repeating itself now? Didn't your teacher ever teach you not to turn your back on an enemy during battle? Watanabe Kaoru's wild laughter echoed, drawing ever closer. Foolish move. Kyosuke muttered coldly as a flicker of dark golden light shimmered around him. The rib-like structure of Susanoo materialized, encasing both him and the injured clan member within its protective embrace. If it were just himself, Kyosuke could have eliminated the woman in countless ways, just as effortlessly as he had dispatched her subordinates earlier. But with an injured companion present, it was best to keep the battle's intensity to a minimum. Bang! The terrifying scorch style struck Susanoo's energy ribs, causing them to sizzle and crackle under the searing heat. It seemed the initial form of Susanoo wasn't sufficient enough to completely repel her attacks. Thankfully, Kyosuke didn't need a perfect defense. A brief delay was more than enough. Never turn your back on the battlefield. Kyosuke stated, rising to his feet. His irregular six-pointed Mangekyo Sharingan bore down on the visibly shaken woman. You can't even muster the courage to meet my gaze, and yet you dare call yourself an enemy of Kyosuke Uchiha. Dark golden flames ignited, wrapping around Susanoo as it manifested a skeletal arm. 3 spinning Magatama glimmered ominously along its length. Yasaka Magatama. Damned brat. Watanabe Kaoru growled through clenched teeth, using her scorch style to condense a series of peculiar fireballs. These were no ordinary fire techniques, even grazing one at close range would leave devastating injuries. For safety, she created 6 flaming spheres and launched them toward the incoming Magatama. Boom! A series of violent explosions erupted. Watanabe Kaoru had hoped to exploit the chaos to attack, but to her dismay, her scorch style barely managed to neutralize his assault. Her mind churned with uncertainty, though her lips maintained their usual bravado. Not bad. It seems the Uchiha aren't as useless as I thought. Is that so? Kyosuke smirked disdainfully, his voice laced with mockery. Your skills match your looks. Utterly pathetic. For a brief moment, Watanabe Kaoru felt as if she had met a true rival. Steadying herself, she began circling Kyosuke cautiously, seeking a weakness in his strange skeletal armor. Yet no matter how hard she searched, she found none. Damn it. What kind of cursed ninjutsu is this? She cursed under her breath. Her strength lay in close combat, with only mediocre capabilities for mid to long range attacks. She threw 2 kunai, but unfortunately, they posed no threat to her opponent. Realizing the situation, she knew she had no choice but to risk getting closer. Humphrey. This time, I'll incinerate you into ash even through that skeletal cage. With her resolve firm, Watanabe Kaoru dashed forward, her body a blur as she closed the distance. Clearly, her mastery of the teleportation jutsu was exceptional, making her a formidable foe overall. But unfortunately for her, Kyosuke, with his Mangekyo Sharingan now activated, was no longer the same man he once was. An opponent of elite Jonin level, even possessing a bloodline limit, could still pose no real threat to him. The skeletal arm reappeared, and the transformed Kusanagi Suzunu's sword materialized, slashing down with overwhelming force in the woman's terrified gaze. The soft earth cracked, creating a deep rift 3 meters wide. The sword's impact was so strong that even the nearby stream, 20 meters away, seemed to briefly halt its flow. No matter how much of a close combat specialist she claimed to be, once Kyosuke activated Suzunu, no matter what beasts or gods stood in his way, a single swing of the sword could erase them. He had to admit, he was starting to relish this feeling of overcoming cleverness with sheer force. Ah! From the cloud of dust, Watanabe Kaoru charged out, clutching her broken arm. She had never anticipated her opponent to be this overwhelmingly powerful. This sense of helplessness was something she had only experienced before with Lord Ritu in battle. The violent impact was something she still vividly recalled every time she awoke in the middle of the night. I have to escape from here. Watanabe Kaoru gritted her teeth and forced her body to activate the teleportation jutsu for the second time in such a short period. This also caused blood to flow out from the broken part of the arm like a burst pipe. It hurt. She hadn't felt such pain in years. But for her life, she knew she had to escape from the boy's grasp. In that moment, she was no different from the Uchiha clansman who had fled before. Trying to escape? Kyosuke's mocking voice rang out perfectly. I heard that ninjas from the land of wind are all fearless in the face of death, but now it seems they are nothing more than a group of frauds, deceiving the world. That boastful Ritu from the sand, he's probably just a useless failure too. This provoked Watanabe Kaoru, who had once held Ritu in high regard. She wanted to react like the person before her, using her life to defy the enemy's mockery. But tragically, she didn't dare turn around. The fear of death weighed heavily on her, making it hard to even breathe, let alone face the overwhelming strength of her opponent once more. She could only flee, but even then, she stubbornly shot back. Kid, we'll meet again on the battlefield soon. As she spoke, she suddenly saw a peculiar kunai coming straight at her. Hey, are you embarrassed? In that moment, she felt an odd sense of satisfaction, as if she were the one who had won. Facing the boy's mocking gaze, she easily tilted her head to dodge the kunai. Just as she was about to say something, the boy disappeared in the blink of an eye. What's going on? Before her surprise and fear could fully settle in, the tip of the Kusanagi sword suddenly pierced her chest. Are you afraid? Kyosuke's voice, like a demon from hell, made her shudder. Ah! I'll make you die. Watanabe Kaoru, knowing her end was near, desperately hoped to drag him down to hell with her. But when she turned around, there was no sign of her enemy. Are you scared? Kyosuke's voice echoed once more in her ear. Watanabe Kaoru was paralyzed with fear. The terror of death had completely overwhelmed her. Thinking of the collection at home, she shook her head frantically, shouting. Don't kill me. I have information you'll be interested in. I can give you Rado's battle plans. Ah, what a brave girl. A mocking smile curled at Kyosuke's lips, but suddenly, he felt a sense of disinterest. Not willing to waste more time, he swiftly formed hand seals, and a blazing fireball engulfed the enemy entirely. She liked corpses, didn't she? Well, let her experience it herself before death. System notification, Successfully killed Watanabe Karu, obtained 8,130 points, 13,840, killing her had covered the cost of exchanging for cell cloning technology. Only 6,000 points left. Kyosuke had already set his sights on the next target. Sage Body, Beginner, exchange requires 20,000 points. Chapter 112, The First Kazekage's Electromagnetic Cannon Bang. Renowned for his usually good temper, Ritu now seemed to have lost all restraint. In a maddened frenzy, he began to smash and destroy everything inside the camp. The news that had just arrived shocked him to the core. Watanabe Karu, whom he had regarded as his right hand, had unexpectedly died by a seemingly insignificant creak. Her charred corpse emitted a foul stench, and it took considerable effort for his subordinates to identify her. Uchiha. Ritu inhaled deeply, finally managing to suppress the rage boiling within him.